Arc 5 Small Farming Lord Chapter 1 This time, Julian Sheng and Kao Mukun fell into eternal rest at almost the same time. When he woke up, he was already indexing high space, violent energy, the result of fate's derailing, forming a huge whirlpool. One chair flowed into Julian Sheng's sea of knowledge, but the other chair was missing. Julian Sheng launched a perception search with all his power, but he still couldn't probe into the whereabouts of the energy. Does he also have a space, like his own Xinghai space, independent of the Lord God's world? This was the only explanation Julian Sheng could think of. In order to determine whether his lover would really follow him into every reincarnation, Julian Sheng didn't hibernate this time, immediately jumping into the next world. Now he was lying on an antique bamboo bed. A drowsy little servant girl was resting on a footstool beside him, and an incense burner on the bogu rack was emitting green smoke, carrying a sweet smell. Julian Sheng avoided the little girl's closing as he got out of bed, then extinguished the incense burner while reading the information the AI sent over. The world was very strange. There were men, women, and Ger. The so-called Ger were men who were able to give birth to children. Their appearance was seemingly no different from a man, but there was a sindor somewhere on their body. The purer the color of the sindor, the higher the Ger's fertility. This country was called Chuyun country. The reason was unknown, but the fertility of women was getting lower and lower, either decades or even a lifetime of infertility or pregnancies that only resulted in males, no females. Seeing the country's dangerously low population on the eve of extinction, the courtiers were anxious. They attributed the cause to the emperor setting up a male empress and angering God, strongly urging the emperor to execute the male empress. The emperor loved the male empress, so he naturally refused, but he built a sacrificial altar to pray to God. God was touched by his sincerity and lowered a beam of light into the male empress's stomach. The male empress gave birth to Chuyun country's first Ger. Most women could only give birth to males, but Ger could give birth to females, male, and Ger children. Moreover, their children were generally beautiful, intelligent, and healthy. Therefore, in Chuyun country, Ger were popular. In order to ensure population growth, the emperor of Chuyun country promulgated a law that stipulated that all Ger must get married by the age of 20. For those who were unengaged, the local government office had the authority to designate them a husband. Jun Sheng's body was a Ger named Zhu Siyu. Between his eyebrows was a pale pink sindor, so his fertility was very low, only a little better than a woman's. Because Julian Sheng had a habit of adjusting the data of the original body to the best status, his sindor had already become deep blood like red. Julian Sheng sized up Shu Ziyu in the mirror, giving a self-deprecating laugh. He always bragged that he was capable of doing anything except giving birth. But this time, lucky or not, he finally became an omnipotent being. He could even give birth. Even so, he didn't want to adjust the body data back. Firstly, health and strength were his most basic dependencies. Secondly, although this Zhu Xiyu was a Ger, currently in the Zhu family, only his personal servant girl, Tweety, and his nanny, Lu Xi, knew the secret. Zhu Xiyu's father had only him in his lifetime. anxious that because of his low fertility, his husband's family would dislike him and he wouldn't be able to keep the huge family property. He covered up his cinder and raised Zhu Ziyu as a man. 3 years ago, the Zhu family husband went out to visit relatives. On the way, they met with mountain bandits and were killed. The family property was inherited by Zhu Xiyu. The Shu household was located in Qingmian County, which was close to the capital. Transportation was convenient and the land was fertile, making it a very affluent county. And the Zhu family had a vast space of fertile land. They could be called the richest family in the vicinity. Zhu Xiyu was raised as a man. His abilities and means were first class. Therefore, the outside would never doubt his identity. If the protagonist Cho of this world hadn't crossed over, he would have probably lived a very comfortable life. Unfortunately, the protagonist Cho did cross over, and Shu Ziyu was immediately downgraded to a vicious male rival, then finally reduced to cannon fodder. Yes, this was a transmigration, BL, farming, culture world. The protagonist Zhou entered the body of a man named Shang Lin, a gear. On his wrist was a brilliant red cinder, making him very popular locally. But his family was poor, and he had a group of annoying relatives, so he had yet to find a husband at 17 years old. In order to protect his useless parents and clever younger brother and sisters, the protagonist Zhou preserved hit gold with farming and eventually became the richest landlord in the vicinity. And the Zhu family was just a stumbling block on his road to prosperity. They were kicked to the horizon by the loyal dog Gong and turned into a meteor. When Zhou Yunsheng woke up, Zhu Ziyu had already irreconcilably offended Shang Lin. Forget about robbing him of the means he used to support his family. He also threatened to destroy his younger brother's promotion route to the imperial examination. By now, Shang Lin had already picked up his injured and suffering from amnesia loyal dog Gong and brought him to his home for treatment. The loyal dog Gong was actually the heir to a marquisate, and in the future he would become a monstrously powerful regent. Presumably, they've already cultivated their feelings. When the loyal dog Gong recovers his memories, he would ride a majestic tall horse and lead a palanquin with 8 carriers to marry the protagonist Zhou. The protagonist Zhou's younger brother would also become the top scorer in the palace exams and rise to fame and fortune. Afterwards, the Zhu family had a miserable outcome. They were stamped into the mud by the protagonist Zhou, who was holding a grudge. Younger brother, and loyal Dong Gong. In the meantime, Shu Ziyu's Gare identity was seen through by the protagonist Gong, who prompted the authorities to wantonly marry him off to an infamous gambler. Not only was his family's vast wealth squandered away, he was also abused, his life worse than a pig or a dog's. In short, how content the current Shu Ziyu was how miserable the future Shu Ziyu will be. Therefore, Zhou Yunsheng's only task this time was to save the Zhu family's property, a regent holding massive military force, enough power to overturn all levels of society. This type of person wasn't easy to deal with. Zhou Yunsheng pondered while applying face rouge to his cinder. Yeah, young master, why didn't you call me when you woke up? The girl lying on the footstool unhurriedly woke up. She promptly went to the bronze mirror to look at him, then was stunned. Young master, how did your cinder change color? The little girl had never seen such a pure, blood-like deep red on any other Gare's body. A young master had this color from birth. Why would they worry about not being able to find him a good husband? Why would Master bother raising him while concealing his identity? I also don't know how it got this way. It was like this when I woke up today. Help me thicken this rouge a bit. It's too thin to conceal it now. Zhu Yunsheng had handed the case over. The little girl snapped out of her shock while stirring some flesh-colored powder into the case. She hesitantly opened. Young master, the color of your cinder probably changed because you were nursed back to health. Young master, you not only look beautiful, even the color of your cinder is so pure. Marrying a high official isn't impossible. Then we'll see who would dare covet the Zhu household's family property. Tweety, your thoughts are too simple. Zhou Yunsheng smiled faintly and waved his hand. How can you know that the high officials wouldn't look down on your family's property? Must a high official have a noble personality? Relying on others will always be worse than relying on yourself. The Zhu household's family property is still better off under my guard. But young master, you can't spend a lifetime all alone. How sad that would be. I won't be alone. Someone is waiting for me, Zhu Yunsheng confidently said. Although he didn't know who the guy had become, he had a mysterious and inexorable feeling that they would definitely meet again, love each other, and stay together, just like every life in the past. Tweety gave a sweet smile at these words. Then she applied the adjusted rouge to the cinder until it was undetectable. Zhu Sheng ate breakfast, then entered his study to look over the account books. His brain was comparable to the most powerful computer. In just a few glances, the outgoing and incoming finances were simplified into tables and stored in his mind. About a quarter of an hour later, he had already mastered all the circumstances of the Zhu family. He was preparing to have Tweety grind ink to make a summary of the property when he heard a knock. The Zhu family's head butler, Zhu Laoxi, was outside requesting an audience. Zhu Ziyu was spoiled by his father. His character was very high-handed and selfish, so he usually often bullied others, extorted, plundered, etc. And Zhu Laoxi was his most effective henchman. This time, Zhu Laoxi had been ordered to go to the Zhang household and seize Zhang Julian's secret century egg recipe. Zhang Julian relied on selling century eggs to earn his first pot of gold. He planned to save some money to send his younger brother to attend school in the county and conveniently repair his house. Unexpectedly, the Zhu family resolutely demanded the recipe from him and also forbade him from selling them again, planning to monopolize the source of revenue. Zhang Julin was naturally unwilling, but his younger brother, Zhang Jiarui, was participating in the courtyard examinations soon. If he didn't compromise with the Zhu family, he wouldn't be able to find a guarantor and unjustly lose qualifications. For his younger brother's future, Zhang Shulin had no choice but to suffer in silence. Currently, Zhu Laoxi was presenting this evil secret recipe to Zhu Ziyu, expecting a few words of praise, but surprisingly he heard the boss ask, "What's this?" "This is the recipe for century eggs, young master. Didn't you order me to get it?" "Was there something like that?" "Young master is always so busy, perhaps you forgot." "But these are just some petty profits. I'm not interested. Take it back." Zhu Yunsheng waved. Zhu Laoxi didn't question it, withdrawing after promising to return it, but he didn't return the recipe. Instead, under the boss's name, he let his wife pickle the century eggs for sale, earning a good profit. Zhu Yunsheng had received Zhu Ziyu's memory. Of course, he understood Zhu Laoxi's greedy nature. When he went away, he knew that he would certainly do this, so this was exactly what he wanted. He was now only a small landlord. He couldn't afford to offend the bigwigs, so building some goodwill was necessary. But he couldn't simply do some good deeds. It was too low effort, and the effect wouldn't be good enough. He needed to be a bit high tech. Plus, plus, he had to let the protagonist view him as an enemy first. Anyway, he wasn't in a hurry. Through the data transmitted by 007, he knew that there would be a big drought in the next few months. The protagonist show was the first to see through the weather changes, so he warned the villagers to stockpile food, saving many lives. Zhu Ziyu believed him and also stockpiled a lot of food, but he sold it at a high price during the critical moment, profiteering from the disaster. Because his actions were so immoral, when the refugees and bandits looted his manor, the loyal Dark Gong's troops refused to go rescue him, and he almost died. This was the turning point for the downfall of the Zhu family. Of course, now it had become the turning point for Zhou Yunsheng's self-rescue. He lived comfortably for almost a month. When the drought was nearing, Zhu Yunsheng finally put on a light blue gown and went to the fields to oversee the harvest. "Good day, landlord." "Landlord, you're here." "Landlord, where are you heading? Do you want me to lead the way?" The laboring tenant farmers saw him and successfully fawned over him. You guys keep busy. I'll just go around." He took 2 steps, then saw a tall, handsome, muscular man standing in the Zhang family's paddy field. He couldn't help but look twice. This person should be Qin Se, the leading military operations with extraordinary skill. Powerful enough to overturn all levels of society, heir to the Shen Wei marquisate. The other man also frowned and looked over at him, his gaze sharp. Chapter 2. Even if he had amnesia and was reduced to a rural villager, the heir to the Shanwei marquisate's momentum was not even slightly diminished. At the moment, his sword-like eyebrows were wrinkled, his thin lips were tightly pursed, and he looked over with narrowed, almond-shaped eyes. The invisible oppression he exerted in the atmosphere could intimidate people. However, Xu Yunsheng wasn't an ordinary person. He raised his chin and stretched out his hand, pointing towards him. "Have I offended you?" The man's skin was very white. Under the sunshine, he looked like a doll carved out of mud and fat jade, without the slightest flaws. Contrarily, his lips were very red, so red it made others unable to look away. His already extraordinarily handsome features were complemented by a pair of glittering, vibrant peach blossom eyes. When he looked over, his eyes were exceedingly beautiful, but also exceedingly arrogant. If he was a Gare, the people dropping by to propose marriage to him would trample the Zhu mansion's threshold. Qin Se stared at him, involuntarily thinking of a 2-line verse. "The beauty in the high palace is like a jade, while the handsome young man is unmatched in the world." Unfortunately, this young man was beautiful, but his behavior was really underwhelming. Thinking of this, Qin Se indifferently looked away, continuing to hoe. Zhu Yunsheng didn't intend to badger him. Seeing his silence, he dropped the subject and picked up some dirt, crumbling it, then examining the circumstances of the drought. Suddenly, a gentle voice shouted behind him, "Little Black, quickly come and eat." Because Shinse had amnesia and suntanned skin, Zhang Shulin nicknamed him Little Black on his own accord. He also saw that he was strong, muscular, and highly skilled in martial arts, so he intended to recruit him as a house guard to help deal with with his group of annoying relatives. Therefore, he was very affectionate with Chinse. His care would even be called meticulous. When Chinse heard his call, he immediately threw the hoe in the fields, his stern expression melting slightly, revealing a gentle look. Zhu Yunsheng seemed to sense something. He stared over, suspecting that this Chinse might be his lover. That man's origin was very mysterious, and he always loses his memories. He was sometimes the protagonist, sometimes a supporting character, sometimes a cannon fodder. It made him unable to predict who he would become this time. Unfortunately, the only way Zhou Cheng could somewhat sense him was through intimate contact. Now, if he wanted to check Chinse's identity, it would really be somewhat difficult. He couldn't just walk up to him and forcefully kiss him, right? If it turned out to be a wrong guess, then in the future, Zhu Yu's ending might be even more miserable than what would be the point. Then what would be the point of coming to this world? Jun Sheng got lost in his thoughts, but after being stabbed by Chin Tse's cold eyes, he snapped out of it, naturally shifting his attention towards the protagonist Cho, denying in his heart, treating me so differently, he can't be that man. The protagonist Cho's appearance could only be considered delicate and pretty, but his warm, jade-like temperament was very attractive. Coupled with his bright red sindoor, his worth immediately surged. Helplessly, his family was really too impoverished, and difficult he had difficult to support annoying relatives holding him back. So, although he was 17, he still couldn't find a husband. At this point, the protagonist Cho also saw him. His smile was immediately replaced by loathing, glaring over at him. Zhu Sheng patted the dirt off his palm, then raised an eyebrow, asking, "Have I offended you?" "I'm the Zhang family's Xu Lin," the protagonist Shou tactfully replied. "Zhang Xulin? Should I know you?" Zhu Sheng raised his chin slightly. His gorgeous facial features made an expression he put on look arrogant. Made any expression he put on look arrogant. He seized his secret recipe, then, in a blink of an eye, he forgot about him. Was a major event that was to him a matter of life and death, not even worth mentioning in his eyes? What a wicked, rich man. Zhang Xulin really wished he could pounce and throttle the other man to death, but Qin Se gripped his wrist as an implicit warning. He had no choice but to let out a mouthful of turbid air and calmly reply, Lord is a Landlord is a busy person. How can he recognize this nobody? I just saw landlord standing there and came over to greet you. Have you eaten yet, landlord? Why don't you join us for a snack? While speaking, he opened the covers of the wicker basket, revealing sesame seed biscuits, pickled vegetables, boiled eggs, and other things. Zhu Cheng glanced at it with disdain, then slightly turned and left. Zhang Shuling's anger rose again, but Qinse gripped his wrist, gently stroking his cinder in silent comfort. At this, he calmed down. The two people ate the sesame seed cake and stared mockingly at the stumbling landlord, who almost tripped over the field ridges several times. I was going to tell him that there'll be a great drought soon, so he should store up some water and food, but now it seems it's not necessary. Zhang Shulin snorted out, laughing. The Zhu family is wealthy. They must stockpile large amount of foods every year, then sell the old grain in the storehouse. You really don't need to worry about them. Chinse rubbed his shaggy head. Eh? What the hell kind of unfair world is this? When natural disasters strike, only the poor suffer. Zhang Shulin gave a dejected sigh, but then he recalled that he, a gay man, was able to come to this place where men and men could openly start a family. This could at least be considered life's gains and losses. At this, he felt comforted again. Chinse didn't reply. He picked up the last egg, peeled it, then passed it to Zhang Lin's mouth. Zhang Shulin took a small bite, then pressed the rest into Chinse's mouth. While the protagonists were acting cozy, Zhu Sheng had taken the carriage back to the Zhu mansion. He changed out of his civilian clothes and went to the dining room for a meal. Young master, this is the Lu Wei the Zhang family sells. I brought one of each variety. Have a taste. Lu Shi set each dish on the table. This is stewed pork. This is stewed tofu. This one's stewed jiansang. Jun Sheng tried them as Lu Shi introduced them. Causing Tweety's mouth to water, she praised, I don't know how the Zhang family comes up with so many ingenious ideas. On top of peddling this food, they also peddle many uncommon things. Forget about the century eggs from last time. The lu wei is really salty and delicious, really memorable. If not for Zhang family making the stewed pig intestines, I would have never known that this stinky stuff was both edible and so delicious. Oh yes, young master, I hear they're setting up a small store in the county, selling something called hot pot. Can you bring Tweety to try it one day? Is this really that delicious? Zhu Shang put down his chopsticks and sneered. I think it's just so-so. They need to cut down on the fennel seed and add more cinnamon. If they add 2 tokay geckos to the marinade, 3 monk fruits, and 250 grams of coriander seed, it'll taste better. Tweety lost her appetite as she listened, her face white. Young master, did you make a mistake? Tokay gecko? Isn't that the sun-dried gecko used in traditional medicine to treat lung blockage? How can you use them for cooking? Won't they stink up the pot? This little girl has no insight. Zhuyin Cheng threw away his handkerchief and cast a sidelong glance at Tweety, smiling. Most of the ingredients used in Zhang family's lu wei are traditional medicines. Don't judge traditional medicines by their odd taste. If blended properly, they can also create supremely delicious flavors. Everyone says that the Zhang family's food is marvelous. I thought it would be delicious, but now it seems to be nothing more than a novelty. Tweety, get me a brush and paper. I'll improve the recipe. Tweety skeptically brought him the brush and paper, asking, Young master, how do you know what ingredients are used in this lu wei? I've never told you? I have had a sensitive tongue from childhood. Forget about the ingredients in this lu wei. Just one sip, I can even tell which river well the water was drawn from in a cup of tea. Xun Sheng smiled neatly. Really handsome, easygoing, and outstanding. Tweety didn't doubt him. She immediately spread the paper and grinded the ink, anticipating the outcome. Xun Sheng rewrote the recipe, carefully annotating the proper boiling method, which ingredients to add during the first few minutes, the amount at what boiling level to take it off the fire to let cool down, how to cut with the knife, set the plates, etc. All had strict instructions. When he finished writing the recipe, he called Zhu Lao Xi over and handed him to lower the tenant farmer's rent from the original 50 to 30%. Every 50% rent, Zhu Lao Xi would secretly take 20%. Now that the boss reduced it to 30%, wouldn't he go cold and hungry? If it was anyone else, they would temporarily restrain themselves a little, but his courage had long been fostered by Zhu Ziyu, becoming bold and fearless. Turning around, not only did he not reduce the rent, he added 10%, turning it into 60%, so he could pocket 10% more than in the past. This instantly provoked serious complaints from the villagers. All his actions were known by Zhou Yunsheng, but he didn't expose him. Zhu Laoshi was his authorized scapegoat. The other side, acting so unscrupulously, was playing into Zhou Yunsheng's hands. When the cook received the recipe, he dedicatedly spent 3 days and 3 nights effort to make a few dishes of lu wei. After a small taste test, his eyes immediately widened, and he regretted that he couldn't swallow his tongue. Although the lu wei was created by the Zhang family, after being altered so much by the boss, its taste can be called a peerless delicacy. In my opinion, it's more than good enough to serve at an imperial feast. The cook gave Tweety a thumbs up. Tweety was twisting a piece of stewed duck neck, gnawing on it. She simply didn't have the willpower to pay attention to him. After eating, she gave a comfortable sigh, then threw him another recipe, urging, "This is the hot pot soup base recipe that young master altered. Quickly get on it. Everyone will eat hot pot tonight." "Great, excellent. Tweety, girl, please come fetch the dishes around 5 p.m. The cook impatiently examined the new recipe. Carrying the savory lunch into the dining room, Tweety curiously asked while setting up, "Young master, after you altered the recipe, the taste can be considered first class. Since the Zhang family's Lu Wei is making so much money, why don't we also open a Lu Wei store? Plus, this hot pot will certainly not taste as delicious as your alteration. So how about we open a hot pot restaurant too?" "Don't be too greedy, little girl." Zhou Yunsheng poured a glass of wine and casually said, "Cutting off someone's livelihood is like killing their parents. Since the Lu Wei and hot pot was created by the Zhang family, why should we fight with them over it? I just love good food. It's really not about money. The world is so big. How can you earn all your money cleanly? Living comfortably, only this is the right thing to do." Tweety also agreed with this, halting her thoughts. Jane Sheng drank wine, accompanied by Lu Wei, gradually feeling slightly tipsy. He narrowed his eyes and contemplated on the protagonist Show's gold finger. The protagonist Show was a chef in modern time, quite knowledgeable about food. However, Chuyun County was a very backward country in terms of culinary technology. Their food variety was very monotonous. Forget about Lu Wei, hot pot, stuffed steamed buns, dumplings, and other traditional food. Even light soy sauce, dark soy sauce, sticky chili bean sauce, and other seasonings were not yet invented. The protagonist Shaw was overjoyed after he realized. Since then, he created fine food and good wine, embarking on the road to riches. And this Goldfinger also helped him firmly grasp the stomach and heart of the loyal dog Gong, who was a foodie, letting him become the biggest winner in life. Jian Shang originally thought that the protagonist Cho's cooking must be superb, but when he tasted the Lu Wei, he immediately understood that his so-called culinary skills were most likely at the level of roadside snack stall. Zhang Shulin was born into an ordinary household. He might never taste truly high-class delicacies in his 2 lifetimes. I actually had such big expectations for the Zhang family's gourmet food. What a waste of time. Zhou Yunsheng gulped down his glass of wine, then switched to pondering over a crucial problem. It seems Qinse already has a favorable impression of Zhang Shulin. If it was that guy, he could never love someone besides me. So Qingse shouldn't be him. Then who could he be? He wouldn't become a passerby, right? The world is so big. Where should I go look for him? Chapter 3. Fortunately, in every reincarnation, his lover's basic information didn't deviate too much. As long as his height was 190 centimeters and up, strong and muscular build, looks masculine and handsome, slight bad habits such as smoking, drugs, possessiveness, voyeurism, etc., he could rely on those 4 points to find him. According to the current situation, the most likely candidate should be Qinse, but Qinse already had feelings for the protagonist Zhou. His cold and handsome face only melted when he saw the protagonist Zhou. Zhou Yunsheng didn't want to believe that he was his lover, so he furtively ordered people to go make some inquiries about this type of man. Lu Xi and Tweety felt very distressed for him, thinking that he didn't want to get married. The man was still not found before the drought erupted. Zhu Yunsheng had no choice but to temporarily shelve his research project and concentrate on responding to the next series of unfortunate events. One day, He was invited by the village head to pay a visit to the fields for examination. Pointing to the withered paddy fields, the village head mourned, "Young master, look at this year's grains. I'm afraid we'll lose them, but we already don't have gruel to drink. At this rate, we'll starve to death. Can you lower the rent a little to give everyone a means to survive?" Sheng didn't respond. He twisted his brows as he circled around the field. Many people had gathered in the distance to wait and see when they'd learned that the landlord would be coming. If the village head smiled, they'd feel that life was full of hope. If the village had looked anxious, it may be assumed that they would have no food this year and have to pay the rent. Then they could only return home and sell their children. After walking through the paddy fields and looking at the weather, Sheng slowly opened. "I expect it won't rain for another 2 months. The grain really will die out by then. Okay, this year's rent will be pardoned." The village head was overjoyed, but before he could thank him, Zhu Liaoxi, who had accompanied him, spoke up, anxious to discourage. "But young master, we also have no surplus grain, and we have to support so many servants. If they don't pay rent, we won't be able to bear it either. Why don't you just lower the rent by 10% instead? What do you think?" Sheng revealed a troubled look after hearing him. The village head suddenly sunk into despair. He clenched a fist, anxious to thoroughly beat up Zhu Laoxi. Qinse, who had extraordinary hearing, was standing close by, listening in on their conversation. He was originally surprised after hearing Zhu Yiyu's proposal, but now, after the performance from Zhu Laoxi, he guessed that the two were collaborating. One played the hero, while the other played the villain. All this to evade the village head's rent reduction request. They really were a pair of colluding villains, heart of wolves and lungs of dogs. Thinking of this, he sneered and turned to leave. But then he heard the young man unhurriedly straight. "I say it'll be pardoned. You say reduce it by 10%. Just who do you think makes decisions for the Zhu family? If I'm unable to bear it, I'll live frugally. If I'm still unable to bear it, I'll dismiss servants. But my Zhu family can't afford to raise a servant who's more ostentatious than me. Zhu Xiyu." Young master, I was just making a suggestion, that's all. Not making decisions on your behalf. Please don't pay me any mind." Zhu Laoxi's scalp grew numb under his gloomy gaze. He dripped cold sweat as he bowed to apologize. Zhu Yinsheng snorted, squinted at him with lowered eyelids. After a while, he looked back at the village head and declared, "This year's rent is pardoned. These are many words. These are many words. Go tell the villagers." The village head went from hopelessness to ecstasy, almost crying. He immediately kneeled down and knocked his head on the ground, now towering to the landlord. Then he started running and shouting, "The landlord said that this year's rent is pardoned. Everyone who has stored grain, there is no need to hoard it. Hurriedly take it out to fill your children's bellies." "Thank you, landlord, thank you." The landlord is really a good man, an extremely good man. Wherever Zhu Xiyu passed, the villagers constantly knelt and kowtowed to him. But he just indifferently waved his hand at them. In the end, he looked askance to Zhu Laoxi and coldly snorted, causing the other man to almost fall flat on his back, paralyzed in fear. Before, when Qinse looked at Zhu Ziyu, he only felt that he was hateful. But now, looking again, he didn't look like an evil man. He looked benevolent instead. That always slightly raised chin, those red lips that seemed to carry a slight upward tilt even when not smiling, those peach blossom eyes that were apt to glance sideways, growing brighter and brighter whenever he got angry. Everything looked particularly cute. Qinse's thin lips involuntarily hooked up. He strode towards the other man, but before he could draw near, he saw his expression change slightly. His brows twisted as he looked at the group of children. The group of children were surrounding a small beggar, holding stones to chase and beat him, their mouths spitting out very vulgar swears. Because of Zhang Julian's advanced warning, the villagers had some food in storage. Their daily lives were relatively more comfortable than the nearby villages. The adults were unwilling to eat their foodstuff, most choosing to feed their children. As a result, the children of the village didn't look like the other village children, who were malnourished and sickly, even unable to walk on the road. Instead, they were bouncing around, very lively. But because the elders always talked about the lack of food, starving to death, etc., the children had developed a special hatred for beggars begging for food. They didn't dare bully the adult beggars, but they swarmed in on the little beggars like this one. After Zhang Shulin arrived, Zhang family's daily life got better and better. Everyone could eat a big serving of rice. His two younger sisters were dressed a lot more respectable than the other girls, so they were usually bullied by the other children. When they saw the small beggar being bullied, they sympathized with him, calling Zhang Yaru over to chase away the group of children and handing the beggar two rice cakes. The little beggar repeatedly thanked them, then limped away. Zhu Cheng silently watched all this. Then he beckoned the village head over. Gather the people in the village and quickly hide in the mountains. A disaster is coming. The village head was frightened, silly. He was about to question when he heard a deep and hoarse voice behind him. Zhu Gongji, why have you said such a thing? It was actually Qin Se, who had strolled over. Look at that child. He has strong and healthy skin and muscles. Although he looks thin, he's actually very sturdy. It's obvious that he usually eats very well. He can't be a beggar living from hand to mouth. When he was surrounded by the children, he dodged with a good deal of discipline, and his stance was very stable, so he must have studied martial arts. Plus, there's a dagger concealed in his leggings. The village head took a closer look. Sure enough, the small beggar's leggings were bulging very slightly. It looked like a sharp of a cutting tool. Think, why would a child disguise himself as a beggar and carry a weapon into the village? When the little girl gave him the rice cake, greed and ruthlessness flashed across his eyes. So I'm afraid he came here with bad intention. I heard that the disaster hit the north side of Fuling County 100 times worse than here. Many people are selling their children and turning to banditry, specifically pillaging nearby villages. That child was probably a scout sent out by roving bandits. You have to quickly organize the villagers and take them to hide in the mountain, lest they die an unjust death. Zhu Cheng had already known that the bandits would inevitably because of the information provided by the AI, but he didn't know the specific time period. When he saw the child, he realized that they would come in a few days. Fortunately, he dug out a huge cellar in the Zhu family, hidden under an abandoned dry well, to store food. Unless the bandits dug deep into the ground, they would never find it. The village head was terrified. Wiping his sweat, he was about to go inform the villagers when he was called back by the landlord. Wait a minute. When you go up the mountain, don't take too much food. Whatever you do, leave some at home. Why? Won't we be letting the bandits off lightly by leaving them grain? Chin Se, who had been listening in silently, suddenly asked. Zhen Sheng's peach blossom eyes glared over at him, denouncing. Are you a moron? If the food is all taken away, making the bandits run around on a wild goose chase, do you think they'll just graciously give up? If that happens, they'll level the whole mountain top to catch and vent their anger on you. Your life or food, which is most important? Weigh it yourself. Saying this, Zhu Sheng gave him another fierce glare, then turned away, sleeves swinging in anger. His eyes are even more beautiful when he's angry. Jinsei couldn't help but think. Then he waved over Zhang Jiarui and his sisters, bringing them back to the house to pack up. Although he had amnesia, he still had his survival instincts. He'd immediately understood Zhu Ziyu's meaning, but he inexplicably wanted to tease him more, admiring the little arrogant look in his glaring eyes. Even though he was scolded as a moron, his heart was somehow a little happy. Seeing the landlord dismiss all his servants, letting them each hide themselves, then take his bodyguards, personal servant girl, and nanny deep into the mountains and forest, the villagers finally panicked, quickly packing up their family to relocate. Because the village head and Little Black strongly advised them, everyone left some food at home. But halfway through the journey, those backing out could be found everywhere, all clamoring to go back and collect it. The village head quarreled with them until he got a headache, but he had no choice but to let them make their own decisions. After that, he took the rest of the peaceful villagers fleeing uphill. Chinse led the 6 Zhang family members on a different route from the villagers. These people were too ignorant, timid, and meddlesome. If they hid with them, they'd most likely suffer a calamity. Chinse campaigned by the border station all year round. His survival ability in the wild was very strong. Soon, finding a very covert cave, just as he pushed aside the vines concealing the cave mouth, a sword stuck out towards him. He dodged sideways and captured the holder's wrist, twisting. He heard a crisp noise, kchat, the wrist fracturing, and the sword fell to the ground. Don't attack us, we're not enemies. A familiar voice made Chinse immediately retract his killing intent. It's the landlord. Zhang Xulin's father and mother saw the man clearly, then quickly rushed forwards to salute. They also pulled their children over to firmly press down their heads in a bow. Stop! Everyone is running for their lives. What use are these formalities? Shu Yunsheng led the group into the cave, then glared at Chinse. Mr. Strongman over there, you broke my guard's hand. What should I do if he's disabled? It's not broken, just dislocated. It'll be fine after I help him reconnect it. Chinse pulled the guard's wrist and neatly twisted it. The guard screamed, then was surprised to find that his wrist was better, smoothly flexible. Zhu Yunsheng gave a cold snort, then put the matter behind him. Zhang Xulin saw that his father and mother were timid and awkward, so he had no choice but to take the initiative to chat, introducing his family to the landlord one by one. They didn't know when the bandits would strike and when they would leave. Everyone would have to live together in the cave for a few days. It was better to have a more harmonious relationship. Otherwise, a Zhu family who had more people in power drove them out to feed the wolves. It'd be terrible. When he introduced Chinse, he didn't notice the embarrassed look that flashed through the man's eyes. Chinse hadn't minded it before, but now, facing the ice sculpture, jade doll like Zhou Xiyu, he unexpectedly felt that his nickname, Little Black, was indeed derogatory. But he had always been very emotional, reserved, so only quickly glanced at Zhou Yunsheng, then looked away. Zhang Xulin was a chatterbox. As soon as he opened his mouth, he would talk endlessly. Zhou Yunsheng indifferently responded, then noticed that Zhang Jiarui would cast over eyes of hatred at him from time to time. He picked up a small branch and pointed it at him, saying, I've always been meaning to ask, have I somehow offended your entire family? There's always one looking at me like they wish they could eat me. How could there be such a thing? Zhang Xulin was about to deny when Zhang Jiarui sneered and said, After cutting off my family's livelihood, you actually blissfully ignored everything in the blink of an eye? How did I cut off your family's livelihood? Zhu Yunsheng narrowed his eyes at him. My family's century egg recipe. Didn't you rob it? Century egg recipe? Didn't I send it back a while ago? Zhu Sheng twisted his eyebrows, expression doubtful. Don't pretend. Who doesn't know what kind of person you are? Zhu Ziyu, Li Jia, Wang Jia only charge 30% rent, but your Zhu family charges us 60% rent, forcing everyone to the brink of starvation. You also forcefully take and heroically seize, wantonly bullying innocents, simply heartless. The more Zhang Jiarui spoke, the more furious he got. What nonsense! Nonsense! Didn't my young master change the rent to 30% a long time ago? Where did you get your 60%? You venomous slanderer! Tweety couldn't listen anymore, standing up with furrowed brows and blazing eyes. Chapter 4. Zhang Jiarui was a scholar. He felt he was above arguing with Tweety. After calming down his agitated emotions, he sneered. Everyone here knows exactly who's the one really speaking nonsense. I'm sorry, I really don't know what you're talking about. When I first took over my family property, I didn't dare drastically change anything, so I kept the rules set by my father. These past 3 years, I've been collecting 50%, but 2 months ago, I changed it to 30%. And after seeing the bad harvest for this year, I simply waived it. My account books can verify it. Little brother, if you're saying something like this, there must be a misunderstanding. Zhu Sheng slowly opened. Zhang Jiarui ridiculed. There is no misunderstanding. Just yesterday, Zhu Laoqi came to my house to press for rent, 60% of the grain, not a percent less. Zhu Sheng's face turned terribly gloomy when he heard this. He looked towards the young guard. This guard was none other than Zhu Laoqi's son, Zhu Fushun. He'd wanted to hide with his father, but unexpectedly the master requested that he'd follow him up the mountains. Zhu Laoxi left him behind in order to show his loyalty. Since Zhu Ziyu became the head of the family, Zhu Laoxi has corrupted the Zhu family property. Zhu Fushun was raised to be incomparably big and obese. He looked more like a landlord's son than Zhu Ziyu. However, his appearance was like a pig, but his inside was cowardly. Under Zhu Ziyu's stare, and after the other guards encircled him and held a sword to his neck, he instantly fell limp like mud. He kneeled on the ground, wiping his tears while kowtowing. Unfortunately, his tongue was in a knot, so his babbling was incoherent. Zhu Yuncheng pointed to him and said, "This is Zhu Laoxi's son. I really don't know anything about a 60% rent, so when the bandits retreat, I'll take him to go find Zhu Laoxi. We'll certainly give the villagers an account." He didn't say much, but the people present could already figure out that something was fishy. Zhu Ziyu said he only got 30% rent, but Zhu Laoxi took away 60%. It was self-evident where the missing 30% went. Zhu Yunsheng paused, then continued. Moreover, in my father's time, we only charged 50%, never 60%. Whoever ate the extra 10%, I'll make sure to vomit it out and return it to everyone. His expression was ruthless, his tone cold. Zhang Shulin was almost fully convinced of his story. Shinsei gave him a deep look, then dropped his eyes to stare at the fire, his thoughts hidden. Zhang Jiarui had an extreme character. Once he hated someone, it was very difficult for him to change course. He sneered. At the end of the day, don't you get to decide how much rent is collected? After provoking public resentment, you present us a scapegoat. After all, he's your family's servant. His good and bad, his life and death, you have the final say. That Zhu Laoxi has been the villain's flunky for so many years. He certainly never thought he'd see that day become the bow that's thrown away after the birds disappear. How pathetic. Boy, you're speaking facts. Yuan Shang praised Zhang Jiarui in his heart, but his expression was very gloomy. He assured, I, Zhu Ziyu, don't consider myself a good man, but I'm not wicked. I would never prey on the villagers. I dare swear to the heavens, if I really instigated Zhu Laoxi to exploit the villagers, may lightning strike me down to a painful death, and after death send me to the 18th layer of hell, so that I will never reincarnate. The ancients had great faith in fate. With him daring to speak such a poisonous oath, Zhang Jiarui was rendered speechless. Tweety and Lu Xi were angered to tears. They really wanted the guards to drive the aggressive boy out. Chin Xie suddenly crushed her arm, thick firewood in hand, saying gravely, Don't recklessly say such a poisonous oath. Your words. We all believe it. In the pause, he filled in a we. It sounded rather unnatural. Zhu Yuancheng raised his eyes and glanced at him. His mood was obviously unpleasant. Zhang Jiarui was in even more of a bad mood. He criticized. Let's put aside the rent for the time being. You robbed my family's secret recipe. This is an indisputable fact, right? Zhu Yuancheng was already getting tired of his aggressive attitude. This time he didn't hold back. I have a very sensitive tongue. I have no need to demand your secret recipe. I only have to eat it once to know the cooking method. Why would I order Zhu Laoxi to steal it? Wouldn't it be pointless? Zhu Laoxi was greedy, so he used my name to do that evil deed. He wanted to present the recipe to me to claim credit, but I rejected it. I even told him to bring it back, but he didn't return it. That is not my responsibility. There are no debts without creditors, and no hatred without cause. If you guys want to find fault, don't come to me. But honestly, I really don't like those eggs. Only the taste and look are a little unique, but eating too much of it will greatly harm your body. It's basically poison. The amount of information in his words was really too much. Zhang Jiarui momentarily didn't know which point to question. After half a day, he shouted red-faced, What nonsense are you spouting? How can my family's century eggs be poisonous? Whether or not it's poison, don't you guys know for yourself? His beautiful peach blossom eyes peered at Zhang Shulin. No way, some ancients actually knew that they shouldn't eat too much century eggs. Shulin felt somewhat guilty, and his face involuntarily showed it. Lince seemed to sense something, his eyes darkening. Zhang Jiarui looked at his brother, then looked back at Zhu Yunsheng, his already red face reddening further, until it could drip blood. Zhu Yunsheng didn't want to let the Zhang family off easily. He continued, The century eggs are made when the duck egg is wrapped with a mixture of soda ash, quicklime, salt, and a certain percentage of lead oxide, plus clay and bran, and pickled for 15 or 16 days. Lead oxide is a traditional Chinese medicine ingredient. It's pungent, salty, cold, and poisonous. It's used to treat boils, ulcers, excessive incised wound bleeding, canker sores, cataracts, burns, ringworms, epilepsy, malaria, dysentery, vomiting, and other illnesses. An appropriate amount can treat illness, but excessive amount will remain in the liver, lungs, kidney, and brain, causing nausea, vomiting, headache, dizziness, abdominal pain, diarrhea, and other ailments. Children are especially affected. If they eat too much, not only will their teeth not grow well, their bones will easily break, which are disastrous consequences. How could I, Zhu Yu, sell such a thing? Meaning the Zhang family knew that it was poisonous and still sold it. All the money they earned was black money. The Zhang couple saw him speak so confidently and had already started believing him. They stared at Zhang Shulin in disbelief. Zhang Julian's face was now red, like Zhang Jiarui's bright red, faintly stinging like he'd received a dozen slaps. He felt uncomfortable and ashamed. He naturally knew the reason why century eggs couldn't be eaten too often. He thought that since everyone didn't eat it every day, there was little harm, so there was no need to say it and affect the business. Now, Zhu Sheng had exposed the unpleasant truth, and it looked like he deliberately intended to harm people. Even if he had 100 mouths, it wouldn't be enough to defend himself. After stalling for half a day, he stammered, "The things the landlord talked about, I really had no idea. Fortunately, my family stopped selling them." How could Chin-se not see that he was lying? He immediately frowned. Zhang Jiarui immediately cut in. "Yeah, my family stopped selling those century eggs a while ago, but your Zhu family opened a shop in the town. It specialized in selling century eggs." "Doc, who owns that shop?" Jun Sheng didn't bother acknowledging Zhang Jiarui. He held a red-hot poker stick and jabbed Zhu Fushun's ass. Zhu Fushun cried out bitterly, "Master, please spare me. The shop is my father's. That recipe was also secretly confiscated by my father. When we go back, I'll immediately ask my father to return the money and shop." "No need. Guilty of both bullying the villagers and coveting your master's property. You'd better use that shop and money to lobby with the authorities. Maybe you can get your father a lighter sentence." This meant that this wasn't going to be privately settled. He was planning to report it to the officials. Zhu Fushun was scared out of his wits. He quickly jumped over to No Town for mercy, but was knocked unconscious by a stone thrown by Qin-se. Zhang Jianwei was rendered speechless, uttering a very dissatisfied huff. Unexpectedly, Tweety opened a package and removed a box of Sichuan chicken stripes to distribute to everyone. She beamed. "This is Lu Wei. My young master improved the recipe after eating yours. You guys try it. Like my young master said earlier, century eggs can be eaten occasionally, but you can't eat too much. Since you guys know, you should tell everyone sooner rather than later." The rich aroma instantly filled the cave. The already hungry residents gulped. Chin-se's characteristic was a loyal dog, Gong, with a black hole for a stomach, so he couldn't resist twisting out a slice first, his dark eyes radiating a brilliant light. Sesame paste, sugar, vinegar, chili oil, Sichuan pepper powder, sesame oil, refined salt, and other seasonings mixed into the bowl evenly, drenching the crispy yet soft chicken strips. Finally, they were sprinkled with tossed sesame seeds. Forget about the smell. Merely the reddish gold color was extremely eye-catching. Once in the mouth, the meat was tender, salty, sweet, peppery, spicy, and sour, all in one without overpowering each other. 1,000 flavors all revolved around the tip of the tongue, making it a memorable dish. "This craftsman is comparable to an imperial chef. Zhang family's Sichuan chicken is not even in the same league," Jinsei evaluated pertinently. After each Zhang family member tasted it, their faces turned red, then white, then green, then purple. It looked really spectacular. Zhang Sheng gave Jinsei a slanted look, snorting out, "You've eaten an imperial feast?" Jinsei hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. "No, just an analogy." Then he quickly glanced at the gorgeous young man's peerless face, then bowed his head and secretly thought, "The Sichuan chicken is good, but Ziyu's squinted peach blossom eyes are even more wonderful." Xu Sheng no longer paid attention to him. He stared at the two brothers, Zhang Jiarui and Zhang Shulin, and spoke word by word. "I am an epicure. My tongue is particularly keen. With just a taste, I can understand the cooking method of every delicious dish and also improve it. I'm a private person, so I prefer enjoying the food myself, rather than selling it to outsiders. You sell yours, I'll eat mine. No one has to get in anyone's way. If I really wanted to make things difficult for you guys, I would have thoroughly cut off your livelihood a long time ago. I'll be honest, your Zhang family's lu wei and hot pot actually taste quite mediocre. The only reason they stand out is their novelty. They are not so valuable that I, Zhu Yu, have to take them by force. He paused a little to enjoy the Zhang family's ashamed expression. Then he pulled out a white handkerchief from his bosom, picked up a small half-burned stick, and sketched out a new marinated recipe, handing it over. Zhu Laoxi is my family's servant. Since he robbed your family's secret recipe, although I had nothing to do with it, it was my lack of oversight. This is the recipe that I was most satisfied with after many adjustments. You guys should bring it back, treat it as compensation. In the future, if you still have the same sour faces when you see me, I won't be as polite as I am now. If someone respects me for a foot, I'll honor them for 10. If someone owes me one, I must get back 1,000. I, Zhu Xiyu, am this type of person. Throwing the handkerchiefs over, he squinted slightly, his lazy look revealing a bit of arrogance. Zhang Jiarui was very smart. He knew that this recipe would bring a lot of benefits to the Zhang family, so he endured the pain of being slapped in the face as he reached out to pick it up. However, he was blocked by Zhang Shulin, who held the handkerchief with 2 hands and handed it back, stammering, "It's us who misunderstood you. Landlord, you're not in the wrong. We are. We really wronged a good person. We don't dare take this recipe. Please take it back." He saw that Zhu Xiyu wasn't moving, so he handed it to Tweety. Tweety was reluctant to give the Zhang family even a small advantage, so she immediately took it back. Zhu Yusheng pointed at him with a stick, sneering, "Hypocrite." There was a well-known phrase with that word in modern times. Bitches are hypocrites. Zhang Shulin couldn't figure out if this word had that meaning or not. Thinking that he, as an ancient, shouldn't have this knowledge, he just gave an embarrassed laugh. After a series of face-slapping, Zhang Shulin's feeling of superiority as a modern man had long since vanished. Chapter 5. Zhang Shulin had only seen Zhu Xiyu from afar before this. Because of the fact that he was so handsome, it gave off a feeling of ferocity. He'd originally thought that the other man was a tyrannical, hostile, and unsympathetic person. He must be difficult to get along with. But after coming into contact with the real man, he finally realized that reality and his imagination was completely contrary. As long as you didn't provoke him, he wouldn't bother with every little thing. His bright red lips, even when not smiling, always bore a slight smile, making anyone who looked at him feel very comfortable. He was a little Sandra, a little laid back, and very carefree, incredibly charismatic. If it wasn't for the previous misunderstanding, Zhang Shulin would have been happy to become friends with the other man. But now, the feeling of shame was so overwhelming that he couldn't lift his head around the other man. All of the Zhang family members felt the same way. They silently moved to the farthest corner of the fire, their faces still a little red with embarrassment. All except Qin Se, who sat firmly as opposite Zhu Xiyu, poking the fire with a stick from time to time, as if nothing had happened. As it was getting late, Zhu Yunsheng felt somewhat sleepy. He covered his mouth and yawned. 2 drops of shiny tears were squeezed out of his eyes, hanging on his eyelashes. This scene reminded Qin Se of a cat lying asleep by the fire in winter. So lazy and cute. If his hand hadn't covered his mouth when he yawned, would he have exposed 2 small, sharp canine teeth? He quickly glanced at the young man, then stared at the fire, lost in thought. After his yawn, Zhou Sheng also stared at the fire, thinking about none other than his lover, who was still MIA. He was once a protagonist, once a supporting role, but also once a cannon fodder. His identity could change at any time. He could be anyone, and they'd only been together for 4 lifetimes. How could he be confident that the man's basic data wouldn't be altered? What if he became a completely different person from before? For example, the protagonist Cho. Thinking of this, his body suddenly shuddered, and he fixed his gaze on Zhang Shulin. Touching upon the bright red cinder on the other man's wrist, his eyes wavered, struggling inside. Zhang Shulin's scalp numbed under his observation. Shang Jiarui also sensed something, tactfully reminding, "My big brother is already betrothed to Little Black." Shinse frowned fiercely, a strong urge to deny it rising in his heart. But Shang Shulin was his life savior. He had promised to become the other's husband to repay his kindness. A man's promise was as heavy as a mountain. He couldn't just break it. After several struggles in his heart, he didn't say anything in the end, but his complexion was a little unsightly. He couldn't understand why he wanted to deny it in front of Zhu Xiyu. This had nothing to do with the other man, right? After hearing this, Zhou Sheng just laughed contemptuously, leaving his previously wild imaginings behind. Everyone quieted down again, but Shinse's mood was no longer as idle as before. He resembled the fire that was crackling and burning brighter and brighter before him, unbearably anxious. He raised his head to sweep his eyes over the young man several times, then quickly looked away before he could notice. Finally, he simply picked up a piece of wood and shaved it with his dagger, throwing the bits into the fire, burning them to ashes. It was as if if this would burn away the troubles and confusion in his heart as well. Time passed imperceptibly. Soon it was the middle of the night, and Shinse's complexion finally returned to normal. He said in a deep voice, "I, Jiarui, and these brothers will keep vigil. You guys sleep." He pointed to the Zhu family's guards. Zhu Fushun was tied into a rice dumpling, still unconscious. "What's the meaning of this? You don't take me for a man?" Zhu Sheng drew a dagger from his boot and narrowed his eyes in a sneer. "Young master, you're not a man. Don't be so stubborn, okay? Hurry and sleep by Nanny." Lu Shi spread bedding on some branches while giving her young master a meaningful look. Tweety also wanted to say something, but hesitated. Shinse still had the same expressionless face. He looked the youth up and down, his eyes slightly doubtful. He wouldn't blame him for his lack of confidence in Zhou Yunsheng. You could only blame Zhu Ziyu's small, powerless body and his arms and legs that were thin like bamboo poles. The gear in this world were comparable to a woman. They naturally looked different than a Herculean man. Seeing his looks, Zhou Yunsheng's heart burned with rage. He threw the dagger into the air and performed a few beautiful tricks, enunciating each word. "Look, my martial arts are more than enough to slice you up." Although he'd lost his memory, Shinse nevertheless wanted to laugh at these words, only feeling that the other man was like a kitten, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, extremely cute. His heart was relentlessly stirring up, but his face was completely expressionless. He just nodded simply. "Okay, you and I will keep the first 2 hours. The others will form pairs and each keep 2 hours. Those who want to sleep should seize the time now." Zhu Yunsheng grunted in agreement. The guards and Zhang Jiarui huddled together to discuss and arrange the order, then laid down on the ground to sleep. Zhu Yunsheng took the initiative to sit near Qin Se. He grabbed the stick from Qin Se's hand and dug the fire. took a few sweet potatoes from his pack and threw them in, covering them with hot ash. The parts of Chinse's body that was near him were all frozen, not daring to move, resembling the poking stick. Julian Shang touched his arm after seeing his lack of reaction. He touched him again. That, finally, pulled his soul back. Do you want some? Chinse stared at the beef jerky in the young man's hand, stretched out his mouth, gulping. The spicy and rich, meaty smell drilled into his nostrils, making him salivate, but made him drool even more. But what made him drool even more was the young man's slender, neat, and round pink fingertips, slightly peeking out. Which one should I eat? As he speculated, he took the beef jerky with a serious expression and mumbled other things, his cheeks appearing dark red under the firelight. Julian Sheng also slowly gnawed on a piece of beef jerky. He then took out a pot of wine, craning his neck to take a gulp. The young man's already rosy lips were moistened by the wine. They looked even more dark red, like blood. His neck was raised in a very graceful arc, and his small Adam's apple moved up and down as he swallowed. He looked extremely cute. Chinse stared blankly, an ominous glint erupting out of his dark eyes, like a wolf observing prey, wanting to pounce on the prey and bite its throat, swallowing it whole. Julian Chang's neck felt a little cold. Thinking that the wine had spilled, he casually wiped it, then turned to Chinse, only to see the other man repeatedly poking at the sweet potatoes with a stick. He gulped frequently, the action very noticeable. He really is a showhound. Sniggering, Julian Shang passed over the wine pot and asked, Would you like a drink? Chinse threw the stick and nodded. He poured the wine into his mouth. Then, seeing the young man turning over the roasted sweet potatoes, not paying any attention to him, he quickly put the bottle to his mouth and took a big gulp. Delicious wine, he praised in his heart, then handed back the wine pot with a straight face, whispering, Zhu Gongji, that marinade recipe from before, can you give it to me? You're quite sharp. You knew to ask me for it in private. Jin Cheng snorted out, laughing, then looked at Tweety. She was already soundly asleep, so he pulled the handkerchief out from her sleeve and handed it over. The handkerchief was stained with Tweety's perfume, making Chinse a little displeased. He waved it over the fire, waiting for the smell to be carried away by the heat, before carefully folding it into a small square and storing it in his pocket. Sure enough, he was a chowhan, treating a marinade recipe like a treasure. Zhen Shang glanced at him, his lips twitching slightly. More people took turns at night watch. Whenever they heard movement, they quickly extinguished the fire. In this way, a few nights passed peacefully. One night, the sound of a sword fight was heard from lower down the mountain. Everyone was frightened. I'll go down and take a look. Chinse pinned the dagger to his waist and warned in a deep voice, You guys stay here. Don't move. I'll come back soon. Don't go. You're alone. What if you run into the bandits? Zhang Shulin rushed over to hug his arm. Chinse seamlessly shook off his hold, then quickly glanced at the ice sculpture-like young man. At this moment, the young man also had on a worried expression. I'll be fine. Trust me. He said this sentence, then stealthily entered the forest. Zhang Shulin's worried eyes were red. His parents and his younger brother and sisters comforted him until he slowly relaxed. On the other hand, Julian Shang went to the cave entrance and stared at the torchlight lower down the mountain. In this forest, the foodie loyal dog Gong would go out and bump into his subordinates, then recover his memory. He remembered that he was the heir to Shen Wei Marquisate, and he was also appointed by the emperor to be the commander of the Zhong army. In the capital, he commanded the left behind Zhong Wei, Shen Se Wei, Guang Yang Wei, Jing Tian Wei, and Yang Wei. Mu Ma Tianhu. Outside he commanded the Jili Yangzhou Wei and Zhou Wei, Gao Yu Wei, Hui An Wei, Zhenhai Wei, Shuzuo Wei, Taishang Wei, and other regional armies. He could be called the most powerful man in the world. His father, Marquis Shen Wei, was only a decoration in his presence. The leading cause of his accident was the sudden death of Chu Yun country's emperor. The Chu Yun emperor was not the child of the current Empress Dowager. He'd never earned the Empress Dowager's love. The Empress Dowager had a son, but he was frivolous, ruthless, unfilial, and knew no brotherly love. The former emperor had hated him. As soon as he became an adult, he was sent far away to Shu Prefecture and was not allowed to return to the capital. After the former emperor died, the Empress Dowager saw that the new emperor had finally secured the throne, so she pulled the bow without shooting. While she stayed in the Shen palace, not inquiring about the outside world, in order to relax the emperor's vigilance, she bribed the imperial kitchen to poison the emperor's food. When the poison penetrated too deep into his bones to be removed, the emperor finally noticed it. He immediately sent word to his close friend since childhood, Qin Se, who was stationed at the border, asking him to return to the capital to help the young crown prince ascend the throne. As soon as the letter reached Qin Se, the emperor died. The Empress Dowager hid his death from the public, only reporting that the emperor was seriously ill. Then she wrote a letter to her son in Shu Prefecture, ordering him to immediately come back to the capital. She was only waiting for him to arrive in the capital and enter the palace to greet the emperor. Then she could announce the emperor's death and prepare a fake imperial edict to have her son steal the throne. So, Qin Se, who held massive military power and the ability to change heaven and earth, became a thorn in the Empress Dowager's side and had to be eliminated. Qin Se was ambushed countless times along the way, but when he was nearing the capital, he was betrayed by a subordinate. He was plotted against and picked up by Zhang Shulin. The subordinate he would soon meet was his childhood friend. They had a strong friendship. After meeting him, the subordinate immediately took him to receive medical treatment, and they used silver needles to dispel the congestion in his brain and restore his memories. After Qin Se restored his memories, in order to confuse the Empress Dowager, he didn't change his identity immediately, but continued to hide in Qingmin County, planning everything in secret. He would send his men to intercept the Empress Dowager's son, while he personally sneaked into the imperial palace to rescue the young crown prince. While Zhang Shulin was still fretful with worry at the top of the mountain, Qin Se had already spurred his horse towards the capital. Chapter 6. Zhang Shulin waited in the mountain for a bitterly long 3 days and nights. His eyes were hollowed out. His 2 dark eye circles were very obvious. On the 4th day, he really couldn't endure it any longer. He grabbed a machete to go down the mountain, but was firmly dissuaded by the Zhang family. "Landlord, you have a lot of staff. Can you send a few people to help find Little Black? Someday I'll definitely do my best to repay this kindness." Zhang Jiarui walked up to Zhou Yunsheng and bowed politely. He had been extremely clever since childhood. He was only 15 years old, but had already passed the county-level imperial exam. He had self-proclaimed superb abilities. He was confident that he would become famous one day. So although he was asking for a favor, his attitude wasn't very humble. Moreover, because of the series of misunderstandings, he felt that he'd lost a lot of face, so he had it very difficult to get rid of grudge against Zhu Ziyu. Not only had his previous malice not decreased, he secretly viewed Zhu Ziyu as a sworn enemy, So he got off a honeyed words a sword in the belly. So he gave off honeyed words a sword in the belly feel. Jin Sheng usually wouldn't bother acknowledging such a person, but if he allowed Zhang Shulin to set off down the mountain to find him alone, like in the original plot, he would certainly get himself lost in the mountains, then have a long-awaited reunion with the showhound loyal dog Gong. Then, like dry firewood next to a fire, their desire would ignite fiercely, and they'll spend the night in a random cave. The loyal Dagong was deeply moved by his act of ignoring his own safety to go down the mountain to look for him. After that, he devoted himself to Zhang Shulin and obeyed his every word, becoming just like a hand-packed husband. Shu Sheng had no intention of breaking them up, but he didn't want their feelings to become more stable either. After thinking a bit, he agreed to the request. This was also an opportunity to ingrate himself to the loyal dog Gong. He took several guards and used the cover of night to hurry down the mountain. The mountain road was rugged. There were thistles and thorns covering the whole area, so it was not long before his hair and clothes were disheveled. Forget about his elegant noble image. The night road was difficult to navigate. Since they had no torches for fear of attracting bandits, they had no choice but to travel by weak moonlight. Even if Zhou Sheng was very physically fit, he hadn't reached the point of gaining night vision, so he tumbled down the mountain after accidentally stepping on a smooth, loose stone. The guards desperately chased after him while cautiously shouting, "Young master!" Chinse was walking through the forest when he saw a figure leaping towards him. He reflexively stretched out his arm to catch it. The moon shone through the gaps in the branches to reveal a face as beautiful as the jade ornament of a cap. "See you?" He was startled, but also pleasantly surprised. His heart kicked into overdrive. The arm that was already wrapped around the other man's waist tightened even more. He asked breathlessly, "How did you get here?" "Oh, it's you." Jin Sheng's head was spinning. After he slowly gathered his wits with great difficulty, he found himself in the loyal dog Gong's embrace. He pushed against the other man's broad chest and said, "You didn't return for a long time, so I took some guards down the mountain to find you." "I'm fine." Chinse's thin lips rose imperceptibly. He helped stand the young man up, then looked him up and down. "Were you hurt anywhere?" "My ankle is sprained." Zhu Sheng moved his ankle, then sucked in a breath of cold air. At that moment, the guards finally caught up and surrounded him in non-stop questions of concern. Chinse was squeezed out from the crowd. His mood, that was still floating in the clouds just a moment ago, crashed down. "I'll carry Zhu Gongji back. I'm a countryman. I'm more used to the mountain roads. I'll be more sure-footed than you guys." Chinse, who had already recovered his memory, boasted shamelessly. The guards were also worried about not being able to carry the young master well and dropping him again, so they helped hoist him onto his back. The Zhang family were overjoyed to see Shu Ziyu come back with Little Black after leaving less than 2 hours ago. "Brother Little Black, where have you been these past few days?" Zhang Shulin threw himself into Chinse's arms, making him stagger, almost dropping the man on his back. When he had amnesia, Chinse felt that Zhang Shulin was very gentle and good at managing the household, so it wouldn't be bad to spend a lifetime with him. But now, for no reason at all, he felt annoyed and even felt somewhat inexplicably guilty. He always had a poker face, and his mood was never shown easily. He simply made up a story about dodging roving bandits, then sent Zhang Shulin away, carefully placing Shu Ziyu onto a soft haystack. "Where's the sprain? I'll take a look." He sat next to the young man and took off his shoe without further words. Lucy and Tweety wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. Unable to reveal their young master's identity, they could only glare at him with fierce eyes. However, Jinsei was so absorbed in checking the youth's injuries that he didn't even notice. Can't you be a gentler? After he quit being the villain, Zhou Sheng hadn't been injured in a long time. So at this time, a mere sprained ankle felt unbearably painful. Jinsei stared blankly at the foot placed in his palm, slightly stunned. He'd never seen such a lustrous white like jade and gracefully shaped foot before. The 5 light pink, smooth and round toes, which were trembling and curled up because of the pain, looked so lovely. He gulped while imagining what it would be like to suck and lick each one of the toes. He earnestly applied pressure with an expressionless face. It looks like the bone isn't broken. Apply some medicine to melt away the swelling, then rest properly for 2 or 3 days and you'll be fine. He fished out a small medicine bottle from his bosom. He applied the fragrant ointment to the swollen area, pressing and rubbing. Zhu Sheng clenched his teeth and endured, but because it was too painful, his eyes were filled with reflexive tears. His dark pupils were soaked in clear tears, becoming more and more soul-stirring. Jinsei quickly glanced at him, baring his teeth as he lowered his head. He really wanted to eat this man. He'd surely be delicious. In order to express their concern, everyone gathered around to look at the injury, so the foot was exposed to everyone's gaze. Jinsei was very irritated at this, so he involuntarily sped up his movements, only waiting for the ointment to penetrate in before helping the young man put on his sock and boot. Afterwards, he said in a flat tone, "All right, this injury should not hinder you too much. Keep this medical cream. It might be useful someday." Ren Sheng took the bottle and sniffed it briefly. Then he snorted out a laugh. "Zijin Chuyu cream. 20 silver taels per bottle. Such a good medicine. Where'd you get it?" Jinsei's expressionless face remained unchanged, replying, "I picked it up on the way." He didn't expect the loyal dog Gong to, besides the Chow Hound attribute, also have the life through one's teeth skill. Zhu Sheng was amused, squinted his eyes as he meaningfully seized up the other man. "I've always been very lucky." Jinsei quickly glanced at him and calmly added, "The Zhang family, except for Zhang Jiarui, all believed him. Since the bandits at the foot of the mountain have been annihilated by the army, when can we go home?" Zhang Shulin calmed his excitement and sat close to Little Black, his face full of anticipation. Jinsei finally met with Zhu Siyu with great difficulty. He resented that he couldn't hide him with him in the cave for another 2 weeks. Hearing this question, he furrowed his brows and remained silent for a long while before muttering out, "We can leave tomorrow at dawn." The 2 young sisters of the Zhang family cried out in surprise. The next day at dawn, Jinsei seized the task of carrying Zhu Siyu on his back, and the group walked into Zhangjia village, surveying the mess. The door of every household was wide open, the water jars in the yard were all smashed, and the plates and bowls in the kitchen laid in pieces on the ground. The grains and poultry were all gone, and everywhere was littered with broken tiles. "Landlord, what's wrong?" The village head led a group of people over. Although there was grief on his face, there was even more joy for having survived the ordeal. "I twisted my foot on the road. It's not a big deal. How are you guys?" Zhu Sheng patted Jinsei's shoulder, indicating that he should let him down. Jinsei didn't move a muscle. standing in place like a wooden stake. The village head sighed. Thanks to the landlord's warning, we survived all right. Fortunately, you made us leave some food behind. Otherwise, our whole village would have suffered a calamity. The neighbors, Zhangdia village, saw us taking refuge in the mountain and also hid in the mountain coal at the back of their village. But they took all the food with them when they hid. Those bandits were so angry when they found nothing, they not only set fire to their village, they also combed the mountains and wantonly murdered anyone they met. What a tragedy! If the army dispatched by the imperial court hadn't arrived in time, I'm afraid not a single villager would have survived. As soon as he finished speaking, the surviving villagers of Zhangjia village had a moment of sobbing, especially the few households who had insisted on running back to get food. Their faces were flushed red like monkey spots. They trekked back to collect all the food and carried it away, but their small lives had actually been saved by the others choosing to abandon their food. After seeing the end of Zhangjia village, they were naturally ashamed to death. Zhu Yunsheng said a few words to the village head, then said his farewells to everyone. When he saw the Zhu family carriage arrive, only then did Qinsei carry him to the carriage very slowly. He stared at the carriage until it disappeared at the end of the road, then turned towards Zhang House. Little Black, quickly come see. Our family's food wasn't found by the bandits. Zhang Shulin smashed the house's brick bed, dragging out several bags of rice from the hole. Qinsei sat silently on a stool, quite uninterested. Zhang Jiaru gathered the broken porcelain into a pile, then loaded it into a dustpan while smiling in Schadenfreude. You're quite smart, big brother. You knew we could hide the food in the brick bed. Our house is so shabby looking. The bandits never expected to find anything here, so they left after hurriedly turning it over once. Unlike the Zhu house, with its richly ornamented pavilions, so magnificent, the bandits probably took one look at it and started drooling. I don't know what kind of mess they made out of his house. If they started a fire. It's not noble to draw pleasure from another's disaster. If not for Zhu Gongji's timely warning, I'm afraid that not even 1 in 10 people in our village would have survived. Yet you don't know how to be grateful. Qinsei opened his expression dark. Before he'd left the Zhangjia, he'd felt that Zhang Jiarui was tough and quite talented. He would be able to handle a position of great power. But now, after looking again, he saw his narrow-mindedness and subpar conduct. He was not worth cultivating. Zhang Jiarui was wrangled in by His Majesty. While secretly guessing at his identity, he justified himself. The Zhu family oppressed the villagers for so many years. I am only speaking this way because I've held back my grievance for so long. The one who oppressed the villagers was Zhu Gongji's father and his butler. Does that have to do with Zhu Gongji? Qinsei glanced at him with a dull look. He said he'd had nothing to do with it. So he had nothing to do with it? Brother Little Black, you actually believe him? Who doesn't know that Zhu Ziyu is more tyrannical than his father? Before he could finish his sentence, someone outside shouted, Zhu Laoxi has been escorted to the officials by the landlord. He says that he bullied the common people and tyrannized the villagers. This crime is unforgivable. The landlord also moved all the account books to the government office. He's going to confront Zhu Laoxi on the spot. Come on, let's go see. As soon as the thought entered his head, Qinsei got up and went to the government office. Zhang Jiarui, who just spoke so confidently, now looked like he had been ruthlessly slapped several times. His cheeks were very red and stinging faintly. Chapter 7. Zhou Sheng thought that the Zhu mansion would have been vandalized by the bandits. In the original plot, the bandits hated the Zhu family's immense riches, so they not only stole all of the Zhu family's property, they also started a fire that destroyed most of the house. But as the carriage approached the property, Zhou Yunsheng discovered that only the gate was slightly damaged. Inside was still intact. Even the flowers and plants were still the same as before he left. A soldier dressed in military uniform came out. Seeing the onlookers, he quickly approached and asked, "Are you returning Zhu Siyu Gongzi of the Zhu family?" "I am he." Zhu Siyu walked over to give a proper greeting with Lu Shi's assistance. "Zhu Gongxi, your courtyard was commandeered by our general Ding Yuan for a temporary command post. Now that the bandits have retreated, we will return it to you." From his military clothes, the soldier's position should be Tianhu, but his attitude was very humble. General Ding Yuan was one of Qince's right-hand men. He had a lot of integrity. He certainly wouldn't covet the Zhu family's property. Zhu Yunsheng's tensed heart finally relaxed. He quickly cupped his hands in thanks, and also ordered Tweety to take out a pouch of silver from the bag and hand it over. The commander had personally ordered him to guard the mansion, so how could the soldier dare neglect it? Naturally, he also didn't dare to accept the silver. After firmly refusing, he gathered his squadron of soldiers and hurriedly left. Rui Shang sat in the intact living room and let out a content sigh. He was just about to let Tweety arrange something to eat when a gatekeeper informed him, "The head butler has returned." "Good timing. Tie him up and send him directly to the government office." Zhu Sheng gave an insidious smile. Zhu Laoxi didn't expect the master to suddenly launch an attack against him. He was so unsuspecting that he even kept the account books detailing his embezzlement of the master's property in his personal luggage, which were dug up by the guards. Zhu Sheng made a big fanfare out of this. He circled several nearby villages while carrying him to the county magistrate's office. In the main hall, he compared Zhu Laoxi and Zhu family's account books, and the onlookers came to a sudden realization. Zhu Laoxi not only overcharged rent by several percent without permission, he also mandated the tenant farmers to give him gifts every New Year. Otherwise, he would take away their fields. These gifts were all stuffed into his own purse. The Zhu family was never involved with it. Whenever his son, Zhu Fushun fancied a beautiful girl or heir, he would unconcernedly kidnap them away, falsely declaring that they would be presented to the landlord for his enjoyment, causing several families to hate Zhu Siyu to the bone. On this point, Zhu Siyu was truly wrongly accused. He was a heir. He could only be pushed down. How could he push down others? Qingmin county magistrate was Qince's subordinate. His character was extremely honest. He immediately accepted the case and ordered the runners to reach Zhu Laoxi's home. Sure enough, they rescued the abducted girls in Gare. The villagers who were crowding the gate to spectate couldn't help but be in an uproar, cursing Zhu Laoxi's heartlessness while feeling wronged for Zhu Siyu. All the bad things were perpetrated by that Zhu Laoxi father and son. All the infamy was carried by Zhu Siyu. Injustice, such injustice. Because of the bandits' attack, when Zhu Laoxi took refuge, he'd carried the embezzled Zhu family property and hidden it away deeply, refusing to return it. The county magistrate ordered that he'd be severely beaten with 40 lashes. He finally whimpered out a confession when he was almost beaten till his last breath. More than a dozen carts of goods and food was dragged to county magistrate office gates, cursing the villagers to gasp in surprise again. Causing the villagers to gasp in surprise again. They had seen greed before, but never to such an extent. He must have almost emptied out the Zhu family's bottom line, right? Su Jiu checked the inventory of the account books one by one. In the end, he kept his hands and said, "Sir Magistrate, now is a time of natural disaster. The people have no way to make a living. These goods and foods were originally the blood and sweat plundered from the villages by Zhu Laoxi. I am too ashamed to accept it. These will be donated to help the villagers, to help everyone make it through the crisis together." The villagers had long been envious of these carts of food. If not for the runners guarding them with swords, there would have been a commotion as everyone scrambled over it. After hearing Zhou Yunsheng's declaration, they all kneeled down and knelt out in gratefulness, tears falling, straightforwardly declaring that Zhu Gongji was a living Buddha. The country magistrate was worried that the warehouse would not have enough food to help the villagers, so he was also overjoyed when he heard these words. He unexpectedly came down from the main hall and bowed deeply, saying that he would report this matter to the imperial court and get a commendation for him. Since the Zhu family's bad reputation was considered completely washed clean by Zhu Yunsheng, Zhang Jiarui and the loyal dog Gong no longer had grounds to suppress the Zhu family in the future. Qinzi was shoved to the outskirts of the crowd by the villagers. He stared blankly as Zhu Xiyu got into the carriage and drove away, then nodded slightly towards the county magistrate. After watching the excitement, the Zhang family conveniently collected a bag of food at the county magistrate's office gate, then happily returned home. Zhang Xulin lamented, "So Su Gongxi has been used as a scapegoat by Zhu Laoxi all along. His parents died, and he was left by himself, young and ignorant, blinded and deceived by a group of unruly servants. He carried such a bad reputation for no reason. He's also pitiful." "What's so pitiful about him? He's never missed out on rent collection. His life is more comfortable than everyone else." Zhang Jiarui sneered. "Sowing on someone else's land, you naturally have to pay them rent. Does he have to give you his land for free before you guys consider him a good person? Where in the world would you find such a bargain?" Qinse, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up, his complexion really gloomy. Zhang Xulin glared at the still indignant Zhang Jiarui, then smiled and nodded his head in agreement. At this time, the village head came over. Rubbing his hands together, he said, "Xulin, the army folks are going to withdraw, but the banditry hasn't been purged. I'm afraid they might regroup someday. After discussing it, everyone has decided to gather a few carts of foodstuff and send them to the military, so they'll come patrol our Yangjia village whenever they have free time as a deterrent. Your family should have some surplus, right? Send 2 bags to the ancestral hall in a little while. There are other families that need to be notified, so I'll leave first." Yang Shulin sent the village head off, then returned home to fret over the bags of grain. Zhang family had a total of 7 people, including Little Black, but only had so much food. They still had to eat from July to the beginning of next year's spring. There was probably not enough to drink watery cognac every day, but now he had to even distribute some to others. How could he be willing? Zhang Jiarui was also very reluctant. He proposed, "Just send a handful. It's the thought that counts. They can obviously clear out the banditry in one swift move." But those soldiers withdrew halfway. It's clear that they're leaving some banditry behind to extort the villagers. Such insatiable greed. This kind of thing wasn't uncommon in Shuyun country. The so-called official bandit collaboration was exactly that. But this didn't include the troops under Chinse's command. The reasons why the troops had withdrawn halfway: one was in order to kill the Empress Dowager's son, two was in order to enter the capital and save the young emperor. After waiting for the situation in the imperial court to stabilize, they would return to destroy the bandits. Zhang Jiaodui's words were completely unwarranted slander. Qinzi glanced at Jiadui with darkened gaze. His impression of him dropped directly to the bottom. Zhang Shulin unexpectedly nodded his head in agreement, but still scolded Zhang Jiarui a little before scooping out half a bowl of foodstuff, readying to take it to the ancestral hall. Suddenly, someone outside proclaimed, "There's no need to send grain. The landlord has sent out grain on behalf of all our villages. He has already sent someone to deliver it to the barracks. The landlord is a good man, a living Buddha. I must pray to the longevity tablet for the landlord. Me too. If it wasn't for the landlord's help, we'd be dead by now." The courtyard outside was noisy. All were praising and saying their gratitude to Zhu Ziyu. Shang Shulin originally thought that the ancient landlords would all be characters like Zhu Bapi. He didn't expect his luck to be so good that he'd actually ran into a charitable man. He hurriedly poured the food back into the bag and laughed happily. Zhang Jiadui's face was pale. He opened his mouth a few times, but didn't know what to mock. In the end, he snorted disdainfully, "Fame seeker." "His desire to seek fame is to your benefit." Qinzi glanced at Zhang Shulin and instructed, "Prepare some Tu Yi. We'll bring them to Zhugongji to express our thanks." "Aye, let's do that. Zhang Shulin hurriedly packed a basket of Tu Yi and was about to step out when the basket was seized by Qinzi. "There are things in the house that need to be taken care of. Stay here. Just me is enough." Zhang Shulin had cursed Zhu Yu numerous times after transmigrating over. It was really a little awkward to meet him right now, so he agreed. Qinzi got his wish and immediately strode out the door. With the summer heat and no rain for months on end, the scorching heat was really unbearable. The Zhu family's property had been cleanly scattered by Zhou Yunsheng. They didn't have the surplus resources to buy an ice basin. He had no choice but to wear thin reddish-colored muslin clothes and stay barefoot. He fanned himself with a bamboo fan, lying half dead in the pavilion by the lotus pond. When Qinzi arrived, he was about to eat lunch. On the table by his feet was a bowl of golden yellow, shiny cold noodles, sprinkled with green onions and pig ears in chili oil. The strong aroma drilled in the nose. Qinzi was a foodie, but the first thing he noticed was not the gourmet food, but the young man's feet that were casually draped over the sofa. The light blue blood vessels climbing and spreading under the jade-like skin texture had a kind of mysterious and elegant beauty. Qinzi could almost see every faint pulsation of blood vessels, and even smell the unique aroma it emitted. He wanted to kneel beside him, holding his pair of jade feet and kissing them, licking and sucking each toe as he appreciated his unparalleled, gorgeous, passionate expression, watching the translucent tears trickle out of the peach blossom eyes as he was ruthlessly bullied by him. One crazy thought after another came to him, making Qinzi feel bewitched. His eyes became fierce and intense, like a wolf that had been starving for a long time. The short table was at his feet, but Zhou Yunsheng thought that Qinzi was staring at the cold noodles. He cursed food addict inwardly as he lazily opened. You can have some if you like. No need to look like you've been starving for centuries. Seriously? Chinsei looked up abruptly, an incredulous look in his eyes, with even a hint of ecstasy. His palm was immediately dampened in sweat, sticky and very uncomfortably. Naturally, why would I be stingy over a bowl of cold noodles? Zhu Sheng sneered. The light in Shinsei's eyes quickly dimmed. He pursed his lips, wiping his sweaty palms on the hem of his shirt, then picked up the bowl of cold noodles and started eating. He ate particularly slowly, but his chewing was particularly ruthless, like there was enmity between him and the bowl of noodles. After wasting the afternoon by the young man's side, Shinsei finally got up to leave. After passing through the Zhu family's gates, his face instantly turned gloomy. No matter how beautiful Zhu Ziyu looked, he was still a man, but he had such sensual and crazy thoughts towards that man. This made Shinsei feel very jumbled up, but what was even more confusing was that he actually had no inclination to give up on Zhu Ziyu. In fact, he was seriously beginning to consider the possibility of using his power to suppress and seize by force. Zhu Xiyu was already 20 years old this year. If he was in another family, he would have already been married with children. Shinsei couldn't afford to delay. But what about Shang Shulin? Could he really betray him? Thinking of this, Shinsei suddenly found himself caught in a dilemma. Chapter 8. Soon, Shinsei had no time to think about other things. Because the capital had imposed martial law, he hadn't been able to sneak into the city last time. This time, he led a group of refugees to storm the city gates, leading to relaxed defenses and a great deal of chaos. It was a good opportunity to infiltrate the capital. He made up an excuse to leave the Zhang family and disguised himself as an imperial guard to easily sneak into the palace. The emperor had a lot of loyal ministers in the court. If he died and the young crown prince quickly followed, the ministers would inevitably get suspicious and cause a lot of trouble. Therefore, the Empress Dowager didn't dare arrogantly touch the crown prince, planning to wait for her son to succeed the throne, then slowly poison the crown prince, so he could follow in his father's footsteps. Shinsei smoothly contacted the young crown prince, but when leaving the place, he was accidentally spotted by some patrolling guards, leading to a city-wide manhunt. At the same time, a young servant boy of the Shu family had also delivered some news. General Ding Yuan, heir to the Shenwei Marquis's deputy general, and the man the master was searching for, had very consistent characteristics. He was 6 feet tall, looked majestic, well built, and smoked tobacco every day, which earned him the nickname Chimney in the army. Yuan Sheng was overjoyed at the news. He immediately spent a lot of money to bribe the capital's gate guards and snuck into the city, staying at the inn across from General Ding Yuan's residence, ready to guard a tree stump waiting for rabbits. After waiting for a whole day and never seeing the man's visage, he felt quite disheartened and returned to his room to rest after a late dinner with Tweety and Lu Shi. Gongji, your bath is ready. Please get in. The inn servant filled the large wooden barrel behind the screen with hot water and flatteringly handed over a basket of flower petals. What's this? Zhou Sheng pointed to the basket of flowers, the corner of his mouth twitching. This was prepared by a maidservant who said it would leave a sweet fragrance after the bath. I'll help Gongzi sprinkle some into the barrel. Tweety and Lucy thought that their young master had come to the city to meet his lover, so naturally they envisioned everything. It was too late for Zhou Sheng to block it, so he had no choice but to throw a piece of silver to the overly attentive inn-worker, then stared at the floating petals stunned. Forget it, he could even give birth now. Why should he care about this kind of thing? He smiled deprecatingly, took off his clothes, and slowly sank into the water. Halfway through the bath, the window behind him was suddenly forcefully pushed in. A hooded man in black halted by the barrel and stared at him, astonished. More precisely, he was staring at the cinder between his eyebrows. "You're a Gare," the man in black blurted out. "Little Black?" Julian Shang quirked his eyebrows, hearing messy footsteps downstairs. He dragged the stunned man into the barrel and pressed him under the water, then quickly closed the window. Fortunately, the water was filled with petals, concealing everything. The door burst open, and a row of soldiers carrying swords rushed in from behind the screen. All were dumbfounded at the sight of a young man clutching his chest, looking terrified. "Who are you guys? How dare you trespass into my room? I'll let you know. I'm the Left Army Commander's Lord Fei's fiancé. If you offend me, you have hell to pay." Jian Shang didn't say this without reason. The Empress Dowager's maiden family had control over the 5th grade troops of the Right Army and was trying to win over the Left Army to help her fight against Shinse's Middle Army. She naturally didn't dare offend the Left Army commander. Plus, Lord Fei's wife had indeed died and was planning to marry a second wife. And he was planning to marry a second wife. The man in the bathtub was already extraordinarily beautiful, but his anger made him even more beautiful. The cinder between his brows was red like it could drip blood. Such a stunning beauty could only be enjoyed by the rich and noble. The soldiers hurriedly glanced at each other, then promptly retreated behind the screen. After randomly searching under the bed, wardrobe, and any other place where a person could hide, they pleaded for forgiveness before heading out. Tweety and Lu Xi quickly locked the door. Chinse burst out of the water and asked through gritted teeth, "You were engaged to Fei Wen Hai?" "It was a ploy." Julian Shang waved his hand indifferently. He wrapped on a robe after stepping out of the bathtub. He'd never thought of himself as anything but a man. He wasn't the slightest bit shy in front of Chinse. Chinse stared at his perky buttocks and slender straight legs, his nose heated up. 2 lines of blood unexpectedly started trailing out. His crotch was also painfully tight, like it was about to explode. Julian Sheng tied his belt and walked barefoot to the table to pour some tea, then asked, "Why did you suddenly turn up here? You even being chased by officers?" "It's hard to explain." Chinse immediately washed away the nosebleed, but he didn't dare stand up from the tub, afraid that the huge sea creature would be discovered by the young man. Julian Cheng already knew everything. He naturally wasn't interested in questioning further. Even if he didn't know, he also knew the principle of less said, less slip-ups. He walked up to the tub and smiled. "How about we make a deal?" "What deal?" Chinse took a deep breath, refusing to look at the youth's perfect body, clearly outlined under his damp clothes. "I'll help you escape the hunt, and you'll forget about me being a Gare." "Why don't you let people know you're a Gare?" Chinse glanced at him and quickly looked away. He pushed down his inner glee as he added, "Since I've seen your body, I should take responsibility." "If you take responsibility for me, what about Zhang Shulin? Don't you guys already have a fixed engagement? Don't tell me you want one of us to be the wife and the other to be a concubine." "Where did you get such a big ego?" Julian Shang sneered, then added, "I don't need you to take responsibility. I already have a sweetheart. Frankly, I came to the capital just to meet him." Chinse originally wanted to explain his relationship with Zhang Shulin, but his mind blanked after hearing the last sentence. He only felt as if his chest had been cleaved by someone, pulling out his beating heart, squeezing and stabbing. The pain was unbearable. He hated himself for rashly agreeing to Zhang Shulin's request. But even more, he hated the person Zhu Xiyu had fallen in love with. He'd do anything to find that person and tear them to pieces. Who's your sweetheart? I wonder if I can have the pleasure of meeting them. His heart was already filled with murderous rage, but his face was expressionless. Wait for me, wait for me to find him, then ask this again. Jun Sheng waved his hand, feeling dejected. You haven't found him yet? Good, then he will disappear forever. Chin-se lowered his eyelids, blocking the killing intent in his eyes. After soaking in the cold water for a long time, he climbed out of the tub and changed into the clean clothes the young man handed him. Two people had vastly different builds. The two people had vastly different bills, so the fabric was stretched taut on Chin-se, sketching out his muscular frame, built over years of leading troops. Zhou Yunsheng glanced at him, then quickly looked away, feeling a little uncomfortable. Just like his lover, this man was also a walking hormone dispenser. I'll sleep on the bed, you take the floor. He took out an extra set of bedding from the cupboard and threw it at Chin-se's feet. Naturally. Chin-se quickly spread out the bedding, then said in a deep voice, There's one more thing I have to correct for Gongji. My name's not Little Black, it's Chin-se. Little Black, such a disgraceful nickname. Did Zhang Shulin take him, a majestic military commander, for a dog? Zhu Yunsheng chuckled in Schadenfreude. Got it, Little Black. Chin-se's eyes flashed, but he unexpectedly didn't refute. It was the same name, but when Zhu Xiyu called it, he actually felt a sense of satisfaction of being willing to go through water and sweat on fire for him, disregarding everything. It seemed that he had fallen head first. After laying down the bedding, the two men put out the light and laid down to sleep. With his beloved in close proximity, Chin-se was somewhat antsy. He recalled his daydreams over and over again, his breathing gradually roughening. He immediately turned over, staring at the silhouette behind the canopy with a hot gaze. His lower body was hard, nearly bursting, but when he'd finally reached his endurance limit and was planning to knock out the youth and put all his ideas into practice, the youth spoke up first. You keep tossing and turning. Can't you sleep? Yes, I rarely sleep in the same room as others. I'm a little uncomfortable. Chin-se froze, slowly adjusting his breath to a relaxed state. Me too. Just put up with it for now. We'll leave the city early tomorrow morning. How will we get out of the city? In disguise, of course. Disguised as what? Chin-se led the youth into a chat while his hand was comforting his lower body. In his mind's eye, the youth's flushed red cheeks and misty teary eyes appeared. He had strong self-control. Even if his body and soul were trembling and frantic for the young man, his breathing was stable. Zhu Sheng laid out tomorrow's plan, then unconsciously fell into a deep sleep. Chin-se finally relaxed, his wolf-like gaze locked onto the youth for a long time, unwilling to leave. The next day, Zhou Yunsheng ordered Tweety to buy some cosmetics. With his superb makeup skill, he disguised Chin-se as a 60-year-old man. His handsome face was now full of wrinkles, and even his neck and the back of his hand had sagging skin. His hair and eyebrows and beard were all grey, and his stooped body staggered with every step, looking like he had one foot in the grave. Even if Chin-se's father and mother were standing in front of him, they definitely wouldn't be able to recognize him. The two took the carriage out of the city. This time, Zhou Yunsheng didn't cover up the cinder between his brows. With a large sum of money supplemented by charm, how could the city gate guards resist him? They only slightly questioned the two before letting them go. When they were nearing Zhang Jia village. After determining that no one was tailing them, Chinse removed his disguise and pulled Zhou Yunsheng's arm, urging, "Cover up your cinder." He didn't want anyone to discover the secret before the imperial court was stabilized. Zhu Ziyu could only be his. "I don't need you to remind me." Zhou Yunsheng snorted coldly. "Cover it now." Chinse refused to relax one bit. Helplessly, Zhou Yunsheng had no choice but to take out the flesh-colored powder to cover up the mark. Chinse was finally satisfied. He hopped out of the carriage and headed straight for the barracks stationed 10 li away. After discussing the rescue plans with his deputy general, he returned to the Zhang family during the night. Zhang Xulin was very happy to see him, but didn't jump on him like usually, standing still and exposing a tangled expression instead. Zhang Jiarui bluntly asked, "Brother Little Black, have you recovered your memories? What is your identity? Someone just secretly sent us a few hundred chatties of rice and a roll of banknotes. They said it was to return our kindness. This kindness could only count as them saving Little Black. It's fine for you guys to accept the rice and banknotes. My identity is inconvenient to announce, but you will naturally find out in the future. Also, don't spread this matter to others. You might provoke a family line-ending disaster." Chinse's gaze was malicious. It was as if the honest and open Little Black of before never existed. Zhang Xulin paled and fried. He immediately nodded and expressed his willingness to keep his lips zipped. But Zhang Jiarui guessed a few things, then asked, his eyes slightly bright, "Then does your marriage to my brother still count?" If this person really was the inexplicably missing heir to the Shenwei marquisate, then the Zhang family would flourish, and he'd also rise through his career like a rocket. "It naturally doesn't count." Chinse didn't hesitate to deny. Zhang Jiarui's wholehearted expectations instantly crashed. He angrily opened. Who would have thought that the dignified army commander was the type of despicable man who goes back on his words? "You're very clever, and you like to show off your cleverness. Strange how people like you always die the fastest," Chinse expressionlessly replied. "I, Chinse, really did promise, but I will not throw away a lifetime of happiness for a promise. There are many ways to repay kindness. It's not worthwhile to use my body as compensation. I lost my memories, not my sanity. If you guys are sensible, you obediently accept my gratitude, and this loan will be settled. If you're not sensible, I have plenty of ways to make you sensible." For the first time, Zhang Xulin realized that the person in front of him was the untouchable heir to the Shenwei marquisate, the frighteningly powerful army commander, not the honest and simple Little Black. He nodded helplessly, his eyes red. No matter how resentful Zhang Jiarui felt, he also knew that an egg couldn't hit a stone. He had no choice but to let go of his wealth and honor let go of the wealth and honor that was within his grasp. Chinse bid the Zhang family farewell, then disappeared into the night without taking anything with him. Chapter 9. Chinse's middle army was already in charge of the defense of the capital. Because of his amnesia, the Empress Dowage's camp exploited the loopholes. Now that he was back, as long as he called, his old subordinates would respond and take back the imperial city. His old subordinates responding and taking back the imperial city would only be a matter of time. But in order to ensure the safety of the young emperor, Chinse didn't make too much noise. Instead, he secretly made arrangements in order to make sure that there would be no bloodshed. This day, the subordinates he'd sent finally captured the Empress Dowage's son alive and brought him back to the barracks. After strictly interrogating through torture, Chinse obtained a list of traitorous officials, then prepared to raid the imperial city to clean up the imperial court the same night. The generals were gathered in the commander's tent to study the sand table when someone suddenly announced outside, "General Yu, someone outside the camp is requesting an audience." General Yu was Qinse's right-hand man and also the General Ding Yuan, who was previously ordered to protect the Zhu mansion. Noticing the commander frowning in discontent, he didn't dare slack off, immediately waving, "Fool, at this time, even the Heavenly Emperor would be turned away if he came. Tell them to leave." The soldier hesitated for a moment, then said, "The other party claims to be Zhu Xiyu from Qingmin County. He came to send the general some army provisions. As the saying goes, an army marches on its stomach, which shows the importance of rations and fodder to the army combat." The surrounding generals' eyes brightened, all looking towards their commander. Why did Ji Yu come to deliver army provisions to specially Yu Cheng? Shin's thick eyebrows furrowed. He waved his hand. "Bring him in." "Yu Cheng, stay. The rest of you leave." The generals bowed and retreated. "What's your relationship with Ziyu? Have you met before?" The commander's tone sounded very gloomy. Yu Cheng was slightly startled. He quickly replied, "The subordinate has never met Zhu Gongji before. I was ordered by commander to guard the Zhu mansion before. Zhu Gongji probably feels grateful for this. That's why he came here to deliver provisions." Obviously, he was the one who'd issued the command, but the benefits all went to his subordinate. Chinse felt very upset, but he didn't want to expose his identity at this time, so he had no choice but to hide behind the screen. He said, "Talk to him. I'll hide for now." Yu Sheng was baffled by his action, but it also wasn't a good idea to ask too many questions. So he had no choice but to have someone invite Zhu Gongji in. When the curtain was lifted, a young man with a striking appearance, wearing dark red-colored light clothing, slowly entered. His bright red lips naturally curled upwards, so that he seemed to have a slight smile, even when not smiling. His peach blossom eyes were sparkling and clear, seemingly passionate, seemingly ruthless. One could not help but be captivated. This person was comparable to the blazing sun, always the focus of attention wherever he goes. Yu Cheng stared in awe. Then, when he finally returned to his senses, he unobtrusively looked for cinder on the other man's body. Agar cinder generally grows in very visible locations, either on the wrist, earlobe, or forehead. The redder the color and the more ideal the position, the higher the value. If a Gare had a bright red cinder in the middle of their forehead, they would be like a heavenly immortal descending on the world of mortals, attracting people from all over the world. Unfortunately, no matter how hard Yu Cheng searched, he couldn't find a cinder. He had no choice but to regretfully admit that Zhu Gongji was a man. Looking like this, yet actually a man, such a waste. His heart was a tangled mess, but Yu Xian didn't reveal it on his face. He straightforwardly asked, "May I ask, why has Zhu Gongji come to deliver us provisions?" There's no such thing as a free lunch. Everyone knew this. Zhou Yunsheng also didn't beat around the bush. He cupped his hands and said, "Honestly, I really do have something to ask of the general. 3 years ago, my parents met with bandits in the Lu Shui area and were both killed. Lu Shui is in the general's jurisdiction. I'll be so bold as to ask the general to send troops to eliminate the bandits at the cost of 200,000 den of foodstuff, saving the common people from harm." Although Zhu Xiyu's only wish was to save the Zhu family, Zhou Yunsheng thought that this was not enough. Since he was taking over someone else's life, he must be perfect. Of course, he also wanted to uncover the General Yang Yuan's true identity. Yu Xiang was over 6 feet, looked heroic, had a cold temperament, and his body exuded a familiar scent of tobacco. No matter where he looked, he really resembled his long-lost lover. If it was ordinary times, Yu Xiang naturally wouldn't reject him, but now the imperial court was approaching a crisis. He was completely under his many he was powerless under his many responsibilities, so he could only apologize. I'm afraid I can't accept Zhu Gongji's request. I won't conceal it from you. I have a lot of urgent matters to take care of right now. I really don't have any time to spare. Jun Sheng knew that he must be under a lot of pressure from the Empress Dowager seizing control of the palace, so he waved his hand and smiled. No matter. I'll come to trouble the general after this matter is dealt with. The 200 dun of provisions will be left to the general as a small token of my appreciation. The general guarded the Jew mentioned before. I haven't had time to thank you yet. He was already dazzling when he was expressionless. His sincere smile was simply soul-stirring and dizzying. Yu Qiang stared in awe again. Then he quickly waved his hand and said, "It was nothing." Jun Sheng didn't dare stay too long in this important military camp. He cupped his hand slightly and was about to take his leave when he suddenly turned back as he walking out of the tent, asking, "General, do you like smoking?" "Yes. Did the smell of tobacco on me offend Zhu Gongji?" Yu Xiang tugged the hem of his shirt in embarrassment. "No, it's a very good smell." Jin Sheng's lips hooked up slightly. Then he sauntered away. In the past, he found the smell of tobacco very repugnant. Only when he couldn't smell it any more did he suddenly realize that he had already gotten used to it. That smell was especially comforting. Yu Sheng's cheeks reddened. He only noticed that the commander was standing in front of him with a dark face and malicious eyes when the other man had walked far away. "You're not allowed to smoke anymore. Throw away your pipe as soon as you get back." "Why?" "Smoking too much is bad for your health. The cold weather makes you cough." "But, Commander, you smoke a lot more than I do." "I quit after I lost my memory." But now it was time to start smoking again. Thinking of this, Chinsei lowered his head and sniffed his arms, but he could only smell fresh soap, no tobacco flavor. He frowned, very upset. That night, the Middle Army's thousands of soldiers suddenly surrounded the imperial city. They captured all 137 members of the Empress Dowager's family alive. The Empress Dowager tried to take the child emperor hostage to break out of the siege, but discovered that the child emperor had disappeared. Her own son also appeared tied up at the entrance of Xinyang Palace with 2 soldiers holding a sword to his neck. The Empress Dowager was helpless. She had no choice but to be arrested. Early the next morning, the mourning bells resounded inside and outside the imperial city. The 4th-generation Chuyun emperor had died. The throne was passed to the not yet 5-year-old young crown prince. The Middle Army commander Qin Se, Left Minister Yang Rong, and Right Minister Huang Bingwen were selected as regents to assist the imperial government. The whole nation mourned for 3 months, after which the young crown prince ascended the throne, waived taxation, and opened up the imperial examinations and granted general amnesty to all citizens. Then a torrential rain suddenly poured over the land, bringing salvation to the barely 1,000 li of Chuyun country. The people now towed towards the direction of the imperial palace, all saying that the child emperor was the true dragon emperor. Having calmed down the imperial court, Qinse, who had already inherited the title of Marquis of Shenwei, led 50,000 soldiers to Luo Shui to eliminate the bandits by order of the emperor, while his trusted aide was sent to the Zhang family with many gifts to express his gratitude. Naturally, the previously sent grain and banknotes was not enough to buy back Jinse's life. This time he added a lot of gold and silver, jewels, and several deeds for villas which were delivered with great fanfare to the Zhang family's door. He also invited a famous scholar to be Zhang Jiarui's teacher. The matter of the Zhang family having saving the Marquis of Shenwei spread throughout the countryside. Those who used to bully the Zhang family were all retaliated on by Zhang Shulin and Zhang Jiarui. A month later, Zhang Jiarui went to the capital to participate in the autumn examination. He won sixth place with good results. Then he immediately participated in the municipal service exam and passed brilliantly once again. In the final court examination, the child emperor heard of the Zhang family's kindness to the Marquis Shenwei, so he selected Zhang Jiarui to be the third-place candidate. This could really be described as my horse proudly gallops with the gentle breeze of spring. In one day I see all Chang'an flowers that make my heart sing. The former Qingmen county magistrate was promoted to the governor of Zhou prefecture for his achievement of protecting the emperor, and Zhang Jiarui logically replaced his position, becoming the newly appointed county magistrate. Zhang Jiarui, who thought he would remain in the Imperial Handan Academy, was very dissatisfied with this job. He visited the Shenwei marquisate several times to try to improve relations, but he was not allowed to enter. He had no choice but to resentfully take the job. But Zhang Shulin was very happy about this, thinking that since his younger brother became the Qingmen country's local tyrant, he was free to flex his muscle without fear of offending any local bullies. He planned to open a winery and specialize in brewing wine. Because Qingmen County had no large-scale cultivation of grapes, the acquisition costs might be very high, so he planned to buy a mountain to grow his own grapes. After searching the vicinity of Qingmen County for a few days, he finally settled on a mountain. He sent someone to ask around and learned that the mountain belonged to the Zhu family. Then he sent Zhu Yu an oral message. "It's not for sale." Zhu Sheng bluntly refused. Zhang Shulin still didn't give up. He increased his reserved price by 10% and reported to the other party. "I said it's not for sale." Even if Zhu Sheng was to let someone off lightly, it wouldn't be the Zhang family. Zhang Shulin was helpless. He had no choice but to continue looking at more mountains. But the soil and water conditions of the other mountains were not as good as the Zhu family's. They wouldn't grow high-quality grapes. He was a fastidious Virgo, so he lost a lot of hair worrying about this. He refused to sell. When Zhang Jiarui heard about this matter, he sneered. "Then I personally dropped by to talk to him." As the saying goes, the river flows 30 years to the east, 30 years to the west. Now that he was the local official of Qingmen County, who must not give him a bit of face? Zhu Yu repeatedly rejected his older brother's request. This was simply blatantly slapping his face. The county magistrate personally came to visit. Even if Zhou Yinsheng was getting fed up with this, he had no choice but to invite him in. The two sat opposite each other, both not smiling on the inside. "Zhu Gongji, my big brother has his eye on that mountain, so name the price." "You'll offer a price first." Zhu Yinsheng took a small sip from his teacup. "How about this number?" Zhang Jiarui extended his palm. Zhu Yinsheng immediately laughed. "My Shu family bought that mountain for 800 taels, and you hack off 300 taels for me at once." "Official Zhang, Are you doing business or are you openly robbing? Zhang Jiarui narrowed his eyes and said, You give me a discount today. I'll help you out some other day. This is mutually beneficial for us. It's pointless to talk about losses suffered. Zhu Gangji is extremely smart. I'm sure you'll make the right choice. As the saying goes, citizens shouldn't fight with officials. A small landlord wanting to compete with the county magistrate was like striking a stone with an egg. But Zhou Yunsheng was very stubborn. The more he was pushed, the more he bounced back. He sneered. I have nothing to ask of you, Official Zhang. Mutual benefit is impossible. I'm not selling this mountain, so Official Zhang, if you please. After saying this, he shook his sleeve to drive him out. Zhang Jiarui didn't expect him to be so unyielding. His complexion changed from red to white, then white to green. He said through gritted teeth, Zhu Gongji, I hope you don't regret this decision later. What? Will you want to use your power to oppress others? Suppressing the House of Benevolence praised by the Emperor, you'll have to find a good name before you can succeed. Otherwise, beware of losing your black hat. Zhu Yunsheng pointed to the gold plate bestowed by the Emperor, which was enshrined in the main hall. It read House of Benevolence. As long as he had this plaque, anyone who wanted to touch this Zhu family must first reconsider. Zhang Jiarui's anger was choked back by his words. He strode away with a purple face. Chapter 10. After Zhang Jiarui went back, he searched for all sorts of excuses to punish the Zhu family. First, he claimed that the Zhu family servant was bullying the villagers and was lawless. But when he arrested them and brought them to the government for official trial, he found out that the wicked servant was Zhu Laoxi's henchman, who had already been ousted by Zhu Ziyu. The servant's actions were absolutely not the Zhu family's responsibility. Later, someone reported that the nobility had tampered with the standard weight, and who, when collecting rent, he was suspected of embezzling taxes from the court. Zhang Jiarui sent his men to investigate. The result was that the great noble Li and Wang family really were tampering with the rent. Only the Zhu family were honest and respectable. After repeatedly investigating several cases, anything related to the Zhu family and anything unrelated to the Zhu family, not only was the Zhu family's House of Benevolence plaque not taken down, he actually made Zhu Ziyu's clean reputation spread further. Zhang Jiarui was so angry that he was sleepless for several nights. He grew deeply resentful of Zhu Ziyu, vowing to destroy the Zhu family. After a month of this, Qinzi eventually returned to the capital severely wounded. If the imperial physician hadn't administered anesthesia to him to help clean a wound on his abdomen that was already festering, he probably would have rushed straight to Xingmen County. This box must be personally delivered to Ziyu today. He carefully instructed Yusheng before falling into a coma. Yusheng didn't dare slack off. He personally carried the box and rode a horse to the Zhu residence. Generally, quickly come in. There I asked, why have you come in such a hurry? Junsheng was very pleasantly surprised to see his visitor. Please accept this box, Zhu Gongji. Yunsheng placed the box on the table. A strong smell of blood spread in the air. Zhu Yunsheng felt his heart shift, and he immediately untied the knot and opened the lid. Shockingly, there was a human head inside. Tweety and Lu Xi repeatedly screamed in fright, but Zhu Yunsheng pressed his palm together and laughed. The person had a Da Peng tattoo on his neck. It was the legendary leader of the Luo Shui mountain bandits, Wang Zhanpeng. He was also the murderer of Zhu Ziyu's father. Finally, the 200,000 chatties of food were not given in vain. Zhou Yunsheng let out a relieved breath and smiled slightly at Yu Sheng. General Yu, this kindness, I will always remember it. After only a brief mention that day, this man had actually taken the matter to heart. After settling the imperial court, he immediately rushed to Luo Shui to get revenge for him. He even took the trouble to personally come deliver the head. For no rhyme or reason. How could he be so thorough? Could he really be the man he was looking for? Heart overflowing with heat, Zhou Shang suddenly pressed the sturdy man into the chair, taking advantage of the short moment while he was stunned to slip his tongue into the other man's mouth, stirring and sucking. Yu Xiang was stupefied, wanting to push back but feeling powerless. Zhu Gongxi's kissing skill was too superb. It seemed to suck out his soul. Zhu Shang's soul didn't feel the slightest bit of familiar throbbing. Yu Cheng wasn't the man he was looking for. How could this be? Sheng narrowed his eyes, slowly stopping his tongue exploring. He took a few steps back and cupped his hand. General Yu, I've offended you. If you please. He thrust his hand out, indicating the other man should leave. Yu Sheng was dazed by the kiss. He actually forgot to blame and resist. When his thinking ability returned, he was already on horseback a few li away from Qingmen County. He absent-mindedly returned to the Shenwei Marquisate with a flushed red face, licking his lips, and sat dazed by his superior's bedside. An hour later, the anesthesia drug's effect gradually disappeared, and Shinsei opened his dark eyes. Did you deliver that thing? He impatiently questioned. I delivered it. Yu Sheng's cheeks were now the color of pig liver. He stammered, Lord Marquis, if a man is interested in you, what should you do? Which man is interested in you? Shinsei scoffed. Zhu Gongji, he kissed me. Yu Sheng covered his face and muffled out. Didn't even find it disgusting. I even wanted it to continue. Lord Marquis, am I doomed? If only Zhu Gongji was a heir, I'd immediately marry him. I wouldn't have to be so confused right now. Shin Se almost catapulted from the bed, his cold gaze turning into a sharp blade, cutting into Yu Cheng's exposed skin. Yu Cheng was so frightened by his gaze that he stammered, Lord Marquis, what's wrong with you? Why are you glaring at me like this? Why would he want to kiss you? Didn't you tell him that I asked you to send the box? Damn this guy. He robbed his credit again. Last time for guarding the Zhu mansion, now for destroying the bandits. I didn't have the time to say it before Zhu Gongji kissed me. At this, Yu Sheng suddenly came to a realization, but then he saw the Lord Marquis kicking the door open and heading out in only a robe. In a blink of an eye, he couldn't even find his silhouette. Zhu Yunsheng was still distressed about his lover's whereabouts when a gatekeeper informed him of Marquis Shenwei's visit. Marquis Shenwei? Little Black? What's he doing here? While he was wondering, the travel-worn-looking man had already arrived at the hall, a thin black-colored robe casually draped over his shoulder, and his white inner garment stained with blood. His handsome face was filled with ferocious wrath. You should know that the reason why the Zhu mansion was saved last time was because I gave the order, and I personally plucked the head of the Lu Shui bandit for you. He strode up to Zhou Yunsheng and stretched out his arms to trap him in between. His eyes were burning hot. So, the intense smell of tobacco hit his face, making Zhu Yunsheng feel somewhat dizzy. So, the one you should thank and fall in love with is me, not Yu Sheng. The one you should kiss is also me, not Yu Sheng. If I ever find out that you've kissed someone else, I'll pull out that person's tongue. Shinsei leaned over and blocked the young man's slightly parted lips as he spoke. As the touch of their tongues and the blending of their fluids, a familiar trembling sensation spread from their bodies to their souls. A myriad of bright fireworks blossomed in their minds. It felt as if they'd obtained all the feelings of joy and satisfaction the world had to offer. The two clung to each other, constantly changing angles to deepen the kiss. A quarter of an hour passed before they reluctantly parted, connected by a silver thread. It really is you, Jun Cheng sighed contently. Then his face darkened questioning. Aren't you already engaged to Zhang Xulin? When was I ever betrothed to him? Chin Se wiped the powder off his lover's forehead and repeatedly kissed the bright red dot. The rumor has been spreading for a long time. They said that Zhang Xulin is the Lord Marquis's future wife. Isn't the reason you're holding the Zhang family so high to pave the way to marry Zhang Xulin? Why are you still coming to mess with me? Fuck off! Jun Cheng kicked at the other man. Chin Se leaned forward with a shameless expression, explaining, I've already cleared that up with the Zhang family, and the reason I made such a big show of giving gifts is to show that I, Marquis Shen Wei, know how to repay kindness. Kindness is kindness, love is love. I'm not going to lose out on a lifetime of happiness for kindness. Jiyu, you're the only one in my heart, and even if you were a man, I would still feel the same about you and have no regrets. If you don't believe me, you can dig out my heart and take a look. He grabbed his lover's hand and intentionally or unintentionally covered his gauze-wrapped wound. When Zhou Sheng saw the blood, he immediately forgot his anger and quickly made Tweety get the medicine box. Thus, Chen Se naturally stayed overnight. After wrapping around each other for half a month, Chen Se finally left to prepare for the wedding. That's right. Zhou Sheng had promised to marry into the aristocracy and became a marquisate's official wife. What pretense could there be between husbands who have been together for several lifetimes? Every moment together should be cherished. Otherwise, in the next reincarnation, there is no telling where that man would wander off to, or with whom he would have unclear relations. But Shang Jiarui had also not stayed idle in this past half-month. He ordered men to inquire about the secrets of the Zhu family in every direction, intending to settle Zhu Yu. Hard work always pays off. He really did dig up an astonishing secret. A maidservant that had been kicked out of the Zhu family unexpectedly claimed that Zhu Yu was a Gare. He had a small cinder between his eyebrows, which was usually covered up by powder. Recalling Zhu Yu's unusually beautiful face, Zhang Jiarui was almost completely convicted. He ordered someone to throw a bucket of water in Zhu Yu's face while he was strolling through the wet market. He even sent an old woman to rush out and wipe his forehead clean, revealing the cinder. The onlookers immediately started spreading the gossip. Thanks to the preaching of some dedicated people, it took less than a day for the story to become well known. Zhang Jiarui timely stepped in to propose a marriage for Zhu Yu. The marriage candidate was the same infamous gambler that had not only bankrupted the Zhu family in the original drama, he had even tortured Zhu Yu to the point where death was preferable to living. When the matchmaker led the gambler to the door, Zhu Sheng welcomed them in with a big smile. As soon as he sat down, no one had even started speaking yet when a gatekeeper reported, "The Marquis of Shenwei has arrived." How could the Lord Marquis be here? What is the relationship between the Lord Marquis and the Zhu family? The matchmaker had only heard about the good relationship between the Zhang family and the Marquisate. But they didn't hear that there was also a friendship between the Zhu family and the Marquisate. Otherwise, how would official Zhang try to punish Zhu Yu like this? You'll find out when he comes in. Ryun Sheng cupped his teacup and slowly skimmed the floating tea froth. He didn't mention personally going out to welcome in the guest. Since Zhang Jiarui was so eager to court death, he had no plans to stop him. If not, how could an old woman get so close to his body? Jinsei ordered the 120 sets of dowries to be taken into the warehouse, then strode into the main hall. When he saw the man sitting upright in the horse seat, he immediately walked over to kiss the crown of his head. His always cold eyes were filled with deep love and warmth. The matchmaker and gambler stared blankly at this. Finally, they felt chill to the bone, like they had fallen into an ice hole. It turns out the real hidden gem was not the Zhang family, but the Zhu family. It seems that this Zhu Xiyu was the true wife of the Marquis. Who are they? Jinsei raised his eyebrows and looked towards the two people. One is a matchmaker, the other is the husband official Zhang hand-picked for me. You didn't know? A few weeks ago, the Zhang family wanted to buy the mountain to the west, but I didn't agree. So now they want to grab my marriage, trying to cleanly pull out my Zhu family by the roots. I also don't know who first started constantly accusing me of being the village tyrant, saying that there's no such thing as a rich benevolent man. But now, looking back, cutting himself off, Jun Cheng laughed disdainfully. Hearing this, Jinsei became furious. He brought Zhou Yunsheng's hand to his lips and kissed it, snorting coldly. What official Zhang? If I'm happy, he can be official Zhang. If I'm not happy, he's less than nothing. After saying this, he pointed to the already paralyzed with fear matchmaker and said, Pass this message to Zhang Jiarui and say that I, Jinsei, can help push him up to the clouds, but can also beat him down into the abyss and make him behave himself. The matchmaker repeatedly nodded and was about to leave with the arm support of the gambler when Zhou Yunsheng coldly said, This insignificant thing dared to propose marriage to my Zhu family. How imprudent! Someone come disable his hands. It was these hands that had repeatedly pushed Zhu Xiyu into circumstances worse than death, so why keep them? The gambler screamed in terror until he lost his voice, but Jinsei burst into unprecedented laughter. He waved his hand at the guards while kissing his lover's delicate cheek. The two guards neatly held down the gambler and severed the tendons in his hand. The two who had arrogantly walked in left in a sorry state. All the villagers witnessed this. The matchmaker didn't dare delay. They immediately ran to the county magistrate's office and described the events from beginning to end. Zhang Jiarui was stunned. He immediately returned home to let Zhang Xulin think of a way out. After all, Zhang Xulin was the Lord Marquis' savior. It was very unlikely that he would kick a benefactor in the teeth. Zhang Xulin's heart was bitter, but for the sake of his younger brother's future, he had no choice but to run to the Zhu family to find Marquis Shen Wei. The gatekeeper refused to let him in, so he could only wait around the corner. It wasn't until early the next morning that he saw an exceptionally handsome man walk out with a satisfied expression. Little Black, wait! He quickly ran over. Who are you calling? Jinsei asked in a heavy voice. Lord Marquis, please wait a moment. I have something to say. Zhang Xulin immediately changed his address. But I have nothing to say to you. All what I owe to the Zhang family, this Marquis has already paid it back in full. This Marquis gave you guys money, land, and even honor. As long as you were content, you definitely would have lived a smooth and carefree life. Unfortunately, you were so greedy that you set your sights on my wife. After my wife refused to sell his land, you actually tried to rob him. And when you failed to rob him, you schemed against his marriage. You wanted to push him into a pit of fire. At the start, you flaunted yourself as a saint, But you acted like this after you gained power. No need to make this marquise feel nauseous. Go back and tell Zhang Jiarui that this marquise will never forget this. Anyone who dares to rob his wife would be killed without mercy. Zhang Xulin was rendered speechless by this rebuke and could only look on helplessly as the other men quickly left. Zhang Jiarui was waiting at the village entrance. His expression was warped one moment, and he clutched at his hair the next. His intense intestines green with regret. When he saw his older brother's dejected expression, he immediately resembled a deflating ball, limp all over. He should have anticipated it. With Zhu Ziyu's extraordinarily beautiful face and carefree and proud temperament, how could Shinsei resist? Big brother, what should we do? He cried out like a child. How could he still have the least bit of county magistrate prestige? Zhang Xulin was also shocked. He could only comfort himself that little Black wouldn't be so cold-blooded. But in fact, Shinsei was a very cold-blooded man. All his gentleness was devoted to Zhou Yuncheng. You could touch him, but if you touched his lover, you would have to suffer his crazy revenge. Zhang Jiarui, the county magistrate, was soon involved in a corrupt case before his position was even stabilized. He was not only imprisoned, his scholarly honor was dismissed, and he was forever blacklisted from official posts. Zhang Xulin sold off the family property to mediate relationships and finally redeemed him out of prison. But the Zhang family lost its wealth and its reputation was thoroughly ruined. Everywhere they went, they were cursed at. People claimed that Zhang Jiarui was a heartless official who entrapped honest people and oppressed the citizens. He deserved to end up like this. They also said that good men really had good rewards. Zhu Gongji was able to marry the Lord Marquis. The heavens were truly watching. The Zhang family could not hold their heads up at all in Qingmen County, so they had no choice but to move to a faraway region to start over. But they had no foundation, no connection, and no money. How could life be so easy? Whenever Zhang Xulin thought up a good money-making idea, it was swiftly rubbed away as soon as he got started, and things were often made deliberately hard for him. This finally made him realize how lucky he was to have met a kind landlord like Zhu Ziyu. Zhang Jiarui's ambition was very high, but his character was sorely lacking. After his official career road was cut off, he felt hopeless and quickly spiraled into a deep depression. He even picked up drinking, gambling, and other bad habits, completely becoming a local ruffian. The locals always shake their heads when I talk about him.